A little more than a year ago, I did a mandatory battles only run for Persona 4 Golden, which to this day is probably the hardest challenge run I have ever done. So how can you top that? Easy, do the same thing for one of the mainline SMT games. And with SMT Vengeance coming up pretty much now, what better way is there to revisit the OG before diving deep into the new installments? So here we go. Can you beat Shin Megami Tensei 5 doing only mandatory battles? The rules are as follows. Only mandatory battles are allowed to be completed. We are allowed to engage random encounters in order to talk to demons for recruitment or essence farming, since those don't give any experience. However, we're not allowed to defeat any of them. Difficulty, of course, as always, is hard since I seemingly hate myself enough for your entertainment. I hope it's worth it at least. No use of grimoires or gospels. Those make you level up after the next battle, even if you get zero experience from it, so obviously those are banned. Level up statues are not allowed either. Similar to the items, you could power level your demons later on by just spamming those, so for the sake of making this even harder, they are banned too. Last but not least, as always, no New Game Plus, we start off a fresh file. Once again, I'm writing this as I go through the run, so at this point I am just as clueless as most of you are, and with that being said, we're ready to head into the run, so let's get going everybody. We start the game, select our difficulty, and get to name our protagonist. Similar to the last mandatory battles only challenge, I named the Naobino after myself, since I'm pretty much the laziest person I know that will find the easiest way out without having to do too much work for it. We go through the opening cutscenes, apocalypse is upon us, and we fuse with the Aogami to become a Naobino before engaging in the first mandatory fight in this challenge against the Daemon. Nothing much to say about this fight, we go through the tutorial and spam CU until the enemy is down. We gain our first level and start putting points into vitality. Since we're probably going to be severely underleveled throughout pretty much the entire game, I am going for a vitality build mostly. Level difference in this game makes up for a huge difference in damage, so we might want to be as bulky as somewhat possible, since it's an automatic game over if Naobino goes down. On the way, we get to tutorial with Pixie and also pick up a slime and a pred on the way before running into Amanosako. We grab an on Moraki, and with that we are up against the very first and also only abscess fight in the entire game. After dodging the charging enemies, we are about to battle 3 mandrakes. While we watch this battle, let me quickly explain why this being the only mandatory abscess is going to become a big problem down the line. As most of you probably know, abscesses are necessary in order to unlock new miracles for Naobino to learn. Among those are upgrades for your skill coverage, stock expansion, increasing the number of maximum skills on both the Naobino and your demons, and a lot of other really useful stuff. All of that is not going to be available, since this is literally the only abscess you have to clear in order to progress the game. So we will be stuck with 5 skill slots, 7 demon slots, and won't be able to get our skill potency up past a mere +1. Some other incredibly useful miracles we're missing out on is being able to inherit elemental affinities from essences, demons being able to use items, or even being able to inherit all skills from an essence. As you can see, this severely limits our options, so the low level is not going to be the only problem we're going to encounter. Anyways, once we cleared the abscess, we get to level 5 and continue on making our way, and there is literally no other mandatory battle left before we reach the first real boss of the game. The only thing worth mentioning on the way is the side quest with Neko Shogun here. By giving it 5 life stones, you get a talisman, but more importantly, some experience that puts Naobino to level 6. And this is the level we have to fight Hydra at, and if you remember, Hydra is level 15, so good luck with that. Another thing I want to mention is that navigating around is incredibly annoying, since you don't see any chests or anything on the map thanks to the abscesses blocking full access to it. Amazingly enough, we make it to the last ley line of this segment without game overing a single time. I thought about putting up a game over counter, but maybe this is not even as bad as I first expected it to be. With the way our current party is set up, I am pretty sure we have no chance against Hydra, but I still wanted to give it a shot just to see how much damage we would be doing, and yeah, that is definitely not going to work that way. To be fair, I haven't optimized my party at all, but with 4 to 5 damage on a weakness hit, we're not going to get anywhere. I was very much aware of that, and I already got an idea of how to combat this. Before that though, we have our first official game over, so here's the counter for it. I'm kinda curious if we can keep it below triple digits once we reach the end of the game. Anyways, after getting crushed by Hydra, the real grind starts. Since now Bino is only level 6, we can't fuse anything that is higher than level 6 as well. Or can we? There is a little way around this, but it's not a very fun one, and it is called fusion accidents. According to some sites online where I have no idea if that information is even correct, fusion accidents can be up to 7 levels higher than what the now Bino is, which means we're looking at a potential max level of 13 here, and this sounds much more promising. Looking at the list of possible demons, there are quite a few that are worth getting, most notably Mermaid. She has access to Stormcaller Song, a unique 3-hit ice attack which is probably our best way of dealing damage here. I also really want to get an Earth Fist since it's an elemental demon, but more on that later. Now, first of all, how do fusion accidents even work in this game? I played through the game twice. Once casually, and once with my no buffs debuffs run I've done like 2 years ago, and I haven't gotten a single fusion accident in either of them. Guides on the internet say fusion accidents can always happen, but have an increased chance of happening during full moon. Personally, I think the chance to get one without full moon is almost none, since it's rather unlikely that I'm going through 2 entire playthroughs without ever seeing one, but whatever. Once it's full moon, we start fusing hoping for a lucky accident. We can do 2 fusions per session before we have to reload the save, and this is something you want to make good use of. You might remember that this game doesn't necessarily perform very well on the Switch, but I completely forgot how bad it can be at times. Loading a save file takes somewhere between 20 to 25 seconds, and with all the menus having loading times as well, it takes forever until we get to the actual fusion part again. Honestly, I think we might be looking at another counter at the top, just counting how many hours we're wasting trying to get fusion accidents. It's not too long until we get the first one, but unfortunately it's a daemon. This one is not really useful, so we just reload the save and keep on trying. I'm not sure if it's worth keeping the lower level ones for some of their skills, but with only a very limited amount of demon stock, we only want to keep the useful ones. After getting 2 more of those, the first useful accident happens roughly 15 minutes later when we get an Asumi. This one is level 11 and has access to Bufo from the get-go, so this is definitely a good candidate for a Hydra party. And then something weird happened. After getting about 4 fusion accidents within the first 25 minutes of grinding, we didn't get another one for the next hour. At this point, I was pretty sure something is wrong, so I asked almighty Google, but I couldn't find any information. The one thing most sites have in common is that they suggest doing it during full moon to increase your chances, but none of them mention anything else. The weird thing is, I haven't changed anything since I started grinding for fusion accidents. The only difference is that I now have Asumi in my party, and this seems way too random to be an influence, right? Well, maybe it's just a big conspiracy theory, but after an hour of not getting any fusion accidents, I switch Asumi out of the party, and lo and behold, within 5 minutes, I get the first fusion accident, getting myself an Earth Fist. So either I just got ridiculously unlucky for an hour straight, or the fact that I got a demon in my party which is higher leveled than now Bino, and or is a fusion accident itself, plays into account here. Anyways, like mentioned, we got Earth Fist here, and there's a very specific reason why I was looking for this one. We are looking for a very specific Magatsui skill called Luck, which can be used by all Genma and Elemental demons. If you're able to beat the enemy on the turn where you activate it, you will get twice the amount of Maka and experience from said battle, and considering we're only fighting a very select number of battles, this is a great way to maximize experience gain. With that, we continue on with our fusion accident adventure, and only about 15 minutes later, we get the next accident with Turdak. Just like Asumi, it is level 11 and has some decent physical skills. With the help of essences, we can also teach it Bufo to generate press turns, so this is another promising looking demon. This means all we have left to get is Mermaid. Simple, right? Well, not so much. It took us another 40 minutes until the next fusion accident, which got us an Angel. Angel has great magic stats, but unfortunately only 8 vitality and is also a level lower than Turdak, so while it might put out more damage, it's probably much squishier. We got 2 back-to-back Mandrakes after, but soon afterwards, we managed to snatch ourselves a Tsukuyomi. Not only is this the highest level demon we can get even with a fusion accident, but it also answers the question whether Turdak or Angel is going to be more useful in the upcoming fight. The answer is neither, because Tsukuyomi has decent magic stats and is also really bulky. While all of that is really nice, the one demon I was looking after the most is still the only one we haven't gotten, so we continue on grinding fusion accidents, and after another 30 minutes of several more useless accidents, it finally happened and we got the Mermaid. With that, our party setup is finally complete. All in all, this entire process took me about 4 hours, so you know what? Let's just put up a counter for that too, considering I am pretty sure we have to go through that entire procedure a couple of more times throughout the game. Now that we finally got our party set, we still have to adjust their move pool a little. We teach Bufu to both Tsukuyomi and also Mermaid. Bufu needs way less MP than Stormcaller Song, and considering we don't have a lot of MP regenerating items, Bufu is a great way of dealing damage while saving up some MP. We also get both Rakunda and Dia on our Naobino. Unfortunately, we don't have access to Tarunda yet, and with the way our fusion accidents went, we also didn't get Rakukaja onto anyone, but considering the demons are here for DPS mostly, it hopefully shouldn't matter too much. With that, we head into the first real battle against Hydra. The strategy is to generate press turns with all demons, while Naobino puts up 2 stages of Rakunda on the enemy for maximum damage output. Hydra can either use physical attacks or fire breath in the beginning. Generally, you get a somewhat decent feeling for what attack is coming after battling it a few times, so on turns where you feel a fire breath might happen, you can throw up a fire dampener. When Hydra draws Magatsui, you can throw up a dark dampener the following turn for some free damage. This is also the point where we activate our Magatsui skill for guaranteed crits. Mermaid now uses Stormcaller Song, and Tsukuyomi goes for Bestial Bite since this one does increase damage on critical hits. We continue with this pattern until we are through about 60% of the enemy's HP. At this point, the first couple of heads will fall off. Hydra will now use Frenzy on the following turn, which is the attack I'm worried about the most since it's a multi-hit physical attack that we can't negate at all. Naobino survives the Frenzy at literally 1 HP, but unfortunately Asumi goes down. Luckily we still got Turdak, so we switch him in and try to recover. The first turn after Frenzy is usually Fire Breath, so we throw up another Fire Dampener to block the attack. Hydra is getting incredibly close to going down now. Unfortunately, the following turn is a physical attack instead of another Fire Breath, which wipes Mermaid. We bring Urfis in and use the Luck Magatsui, but even though Hydra is pretty close, we can't do enough damage due to the lack of press turns, and the following turn Hydra wipes the party after an unlucky crit. To be honest, I was not expecting to get this close on my very first attempt, but this shows that we're on the right path. Now I'm not going to go through every attempt in detail, so let's skip over the next couple. Attempt number 2 died when Hydra one-shot Naobino from full HP, and number 3 when an unlucky early crit got rid of Asumi. The next one ended at the first Frenzy, which did 65 damage to Naobino, so it seems that it's a range whether he can survive it or not. Because of this, we will now guard with him before Frenzy to make sure we can get through with it without game overing. Attempt number 5 ended again after we got Frenzied, and then an unlucky crit to follow things up, but attempt number 6 is where we made some progress. This time the entire party manages to survive the Frenzy turn, we bring in Turdak for Asumi, and after blocking the next attack with a Fire Dampener, we're getting very close to winning. Again we get somewhat lucky as Turdak gets wiped, which was pretty much the perfect scenario, and we bring in Urfis. We throw a Fire Dampener hoping for a Fire Breath, but unfortunately Hydra hits Urfis first, and then proceeds to wipe Mermaid. Since this is probably our last turn, we activate the Luck Magatsui and try to squeeze the last bits of damage out of the boss. The Ice Gem from Naobino does a whopping 5 damage, but the scratch damage from Tsukuyomi afterwards is just enough to win the first boss battle in this challenge. Naobino doubles his level, going from 6 all the way to 12. While we mostly focus on vitality in this build, I'm also going to put a few points into agility every now and then to increase the chance of dodging enemy attacks. Considering Nahobino is mostly going to act as support or healer, the majority of the other stats are not really that important. With that, we continue on our journey to beat the game doing only mandatory battles. We unlock the second half of Area 1, and one of the things that is nice about this type of run is that overworld exploration usually goes by pretty fast. In a normal playthrough, you fight all kinds of enemies which costs a lot of time, but here we just skip through everything while only collecting the useful items on the way, so that is very nice and time saving. You know what's not time saving? The next set of fusion accidents. While we did get another level thanks to completing a story related quest, the available demons at our level are not useful at all for the next upcoming fights. By the way, we also game over here once due to an unlucky ambush, so that's another +1 for the game over counter. We get the Aogami Essence Type 2, which includes Miracle Water, so from now on we also have access to an AoE heal, which is definitely going to come in very useful. With that, we are off into the next set of fusion accidents. The first one we stumble into is Archangel, and while this was not necessarily one of the demons I was looking for, it has decent stats, and its level is also quite high, so it might be useful for the upcoming battles. Number 2 is Bicorn, who is not necessarily the strongest, but has access to Beatdown and also learns Charge and Beast Eye hopefully. Two very useful skills we could pass on during future fusions. Up next is Sen. Not really the big game changer, but with high crit skills and a poison effect, this could be kinda useful as well. The next one took a while, but it was very well worth it when we got a Fortuna. We want to have a demon with null force for the last boss fight of Area 1 against Nuwa, so getting her early is definitely a rather nice thing. She also has a very high magic stat, so overall, probably the best accident we have gotten during this segment. The last one we get here is Mokoi, which is really good for the upcoming battle as well. It can hit everybody's weakness with Mazio, and eventually gets access to Trafuri, which makes escape from battle a lot easier. Those who have been following the channel for a while know that I'm not necessarily good when it comes to overworld movement, so more often than not I accidentally run straight into an enemy. With that, our setup should be good enough for the upcoming battle. Overall, this segment took roughly 2 hours, so we add that to our counter and bring our total up to 6 hours spent on fusion accidents already. We get CO on all our demons and head into the next mandatory fight against Eligor and 2 Andres. We start off the battle by immediately activating our critical skill and then start going to work on the first Andres. You want to make sure to get rid of the ads fast, since 3 enemies can quickly overrun your party in a setup like this. Everybody throws out COs, with Archangel going for Bestial Bite for the increased crit damage on the enemy. Unfortunately, we're not quite able to get rid of the first Andres already. They like to use Tsukuyomi on Eligor and therefore waste their turns, but unfortunately the second one wiped Mokoi after the party was already weakened from Maraki. We bring in Bicorn and continue with the damage and are able to get rid of the first Andres. Miracle Water comes in clutch in this battle since AoE healing is very much needed. We also get lucky with Eligor attacking Archangel with Gram Slice, since I am pretty sure everybody else would have gone down to that hit. We secunda Eligor to make sure Andres wastes its turn by reapplying it and continue doing damage. Eligor again targets Archangel and we apply a defense buff to Nahobino, since I feel like we already stretched out our luck for too long, but again Eligor goes for Archangel. I don't know if its AI is coded to always attack the strongest demon or if I'm just getting very lucky here. Either way, I'm not going to complain. We managed to get rid of Andres number 2 the following turn and bring in Sen for Bicorn. As you can tell, we're going through pretty much every demon we have used in the meantime. We start doing damage on Eligor and things are looking rather well, but eventually Eligor manages to land a crit and wipes both Fortuna and Sen within a single turn. At this point, recovery is pretty much impossible and we get wiped after Maragi the following turn. While we couldn't get a first try victory here, this still went much better than I expected. One thing I also forgot was putting Secunda on Nahobino, so after doing that, we go back in and give this battle another try. The start of the battle is pretty much the same as before, with the only difference being Nahobino lowering Eligor's evasion using Secunda. This time Mokui manages to survive turn 1, and with the constant Secunda, Andres pretty much wastes all of his turns buffing Eligor with Tsukukasha. We skip forward to the point where only Eligor is left. We put on 2 stages of Rakunda to increase our damage output and start going to work. Again, we switch our demons around when their MP run out, and towards the end we bring in Urfist for the Luck Magatsui. After that, we're able to get Eligor down and finish the battle off on only our second attempt. We gain 3 more levels, going to level 16, and once again put the majority of our points into Vitality. Bicorn also gets access to Charge, which is going to be useful when carrying over to other demons. The quest completion gives us 1 more level, so we head into the final boss fight of Area 1 at level 17. Since I'm not that satisfied with our current setup though, we head back into the World of Shadows for some more, you might already guessed it, fusion accidents. Fortuna is already set as Shinal's force, and Archangel also seems like a good fit for the upcoming battle. Ideally, I want to grab a Pyrojack or a Rakshasa, but we will see what we're able to grab this time around. Speaking of fusion accidents, I don't know what the exact chances are, but occasionally you can also get a level 1 slime during that. I love that I always get excited when I see the wrecked background, only to have a slime revealed. Fun times for sure. Anyways, after roughly 30 minutes, we get Exuan Wu, which unfortunately isn't really useful for the upcoming battle, but we will still keep it due to its high level and vitality stat. Tanks are always appreciated, so it might be useful at some point. Only 15 minutes later, we get exactly what I was hoping for with Rakshasa. Rakshasa has got great strength, and as Yaki demon also has access to Rasetsu Feast, which is a 2-stage AoE debilitate that we can use as a Magatsui skill. With that, we should have everything we need for Nuwa, so after putting Agi on everybody and also Taunt on Fortuna, we head into the last boss fight of Area 1. Unfortunately, I forgot to fully refill my Magatsui bar, so we have to go through 2 turns with Nuwa before we can activate it. So once the bar is full, we go for Rasetsu Feast and... wait. Where's Rasetsu Feast? Yakis are able to use Rasetsu Feast, right? Well, yeah, they would be, but unfortunately I forgot to pick up the Yaki talisman from the Rakshasa on top of the building, so yeah, that's a reset. Even though there technically was no game over, we still add +1 to the counter and return to the boss fight after getting the talisman and making sure the Magatsui bar is full as well. Okay, now for the actual strategy against Nuwa. We open up casting Rasetsu Feast, this time for real, and start going to work using Agi to generate additional press turns. Fortuna will use Taunt to draw all single target attacks to her. Nuwa mainly uses Sanma as single target attack, and with Fortuna nulling Force, she basically wastes her entire turn that way. If she's not casting Sanma, she also likes to use Mazio, which luckily Nahobino nulls, so again, her turn will be eaten. She can also use regular attacks sometimes, but luckily Fortuna can tank those, and after healing up, we're not in any danger. Occasionally Nuwa will also draw Magatsui for her Sacrifices of Clay attack, but we can easily guard that with a Force Dampener, and yeah, that is pretty much the entire fight. Nahobino keeps the debuffs up, with the other 3 going in for damage. Since this fight also gives no experience, we can use the critical Magatsui without having to worry about popping off the luck at the right time. Once Rakshasa runs out of MP, we also bring Exuan Wu to keep the damage up. We could also use chakra drops to restore MP, but those are still rather rare at this point, and I want to keep as many of those as possible. Usually Nahobino is the only one that gets his MP restored to keep up with the debuffs. We basically keep this up until we're about halfway through HP, where the fight automatically ends, and we're done with Area 1 of the game. Not going to lie, this was not as bad as I expected it to be. Taunt pulls a lot of weight in this fight, and it would probably come in very handy the next boss fights that are up ahead as well. After going through various cutscenes, we're back in Tokyo where Lahmu attacks the temple. Before fighting him though, we have to go through a battle with 2 Lamias and Ansus first. The Lamias are weak to ice, while the Ansus are weak to electricity. Luckily the enemies don't deal a lot of damage, so we can easily take care of them with our current setup. Also, there is no use of the Luck Magatsui here, because once we're done with this battle, we are immediately heading into the first battle against Lahmu. This one is a nice preview of what's to come later, but luckily this version is no problem at all, since it literally only uses Mudo, so with the help of Dark Dampeners, we don't take any damage in this battle at all. Unfortunately, our Magatsui bar didn't fully refill and we ran out of dampeners, which led to Mokui going down, but overall it's not a big problem, and once the bar is full we go for the winning blow, gaining another level to 18. For the battles in school, there isn't really that much worth mentioning, since it's pretty much just regular demons. We try to refill our Magatsui bar after every battle in order to squeeze out the most experience out of those encounters. The fights themselves are not a big issue. The only one that is worth mentioning is the last one against Mananangle and the two Shiki Uchis, since this one is always an ambush, and while nobody got wiped on turn 1, one of the Shiki Uchis insta-wipes now Bino with a Mudo on turn 2, so that's another +1 for our game over counter. Attempt number 2 went better, where we insta-wiped Mananangle with Hama, and then focused on the Shiki Uchis with fire. Flame Ace triggers the Luck Magatsui again, and we end the school segment on level 19. We will probably get 1 or 2 more levels from story quests, but we will still be severely underleveled going into the next boss fight, but more on that when we get there. Lahmu escapes into Red Desert, and we're off into Area 2 of the game. Again, the exploration part goes by relatively quickly since, well, we're not really fighting anything, and once we got the first part of the students saved, we complete the quest and gain another level to 20. This is going to be the level we have to fight Lugaru at, and to be honest, I'm not really looking forward to this fight at all. Lugaru is level 28, so we're looking at an 8 level difference, and at this point, you probably know what that means. It's time for some more fusion accident grinding. Again, we're looking for high level demons with a good magic stat, but the most important demon we want to grab here is probably Oni. Oni is the first demon to resist physical, and with Lugaru pretty much exclusively using physical attacks if you don't count the Magatsui attack, we definitely want Oni as a tank. The first fusion accident we get, however, is Jack Frost, and this one's a pretty good start too. Ice hits the weakness, and with Jack Bufula we also have Rakunda as secondary effect, which takes some pressure off Naobino when it comes to constantly debuffing the enemy. Unfortunately, it's going to take some time until we hit the next useful fusion accident. While I did get several accidents in between, most of them weren't really useful, so we're not going to mention every single one of them in order to keep this video from getting even longer than it already will. It took almost 2.5 hours, but the next one was the Oni that I was so hoping to get. Like mentioned, he will be the perfect tank for the upcoming boss, and with Jack Frost already in our inventory, we only need one more good mage to continue. Shouldn't be that hard, right? After 2 more hours, we finally got something kinda useful with Kappa Tengu. Now, this wasn't really what I was hoping for, but after roughly 5 hours of grinding fusion accidents, I just wanted to continue on with the game, so I went with the setup and tried my luck at the boss. We inherit Bufu on both Kappa Tengu and Naobino, as well as Taunt on Oni, and that is it, we're going into the next boss battle against the already mentioned Lugaru. Just like the last time, we start off the battle with Rosetsu Feast, and then start doing damage to the boss. Oni sets up the taunt, and we should be good to go, right? Well, not that much. Lugaru has an attack called Axle Claw, and since this one targets random enemies, it is also not affected by taunt, and yeah, you can see how well this goes. There goes the first attempt pretty much. Luckily, the Axle Claw on turn 1 is not guaranteed, and we get a much better outcome on our second attempt. When he uses Critical Aura, he will always follow it up with Damascus Claw, which is another multi-hit attack, but luckily to a single target, so it can be taunted. When Lugaru draws Magatsui, he will follow it up with Soufflé Declare, which is his only non-physical attack. Luckily, we can once again easily nullify it using an electric dampener, and this is pretty much the pattern for the fight. The biggest issue is easily Axle Claw, which can one-shot party members without any problem if you get unlucky. But wait, there is more to this. Just because you have taunt up doesn't mean that the boss is guaranteed to attack only, because occasionally, for reasons unbeknownst to myself, he just completely ignores the taunt and just wipes a random party member. What a fun boss fight this is. I am so excited, I can't even put it into words. Anyways, those things are pretty much what I game overed on for the next while, So let's have a nice little slideshow about all attempts against Lugaru that didn't lead anywhere. After not making any progress and game overing over and over again, eventually I decided that I need to change up a couple of things. Kappa Tango is definitely my weak link, so once again we return to the world of shadows to force a more useful fusion accident. Luckily this time it only took me 30 minutes until we eventually got somebody I wanted to grab regardless at some point, and that little fella is somebody that I'm sure everybody recognizes from their own playthrough. I am talking about Cerberus. Not only is he our highest level demon in this setup, he's also the first demon with access to Restore, which returns 10 MP to the user every time you hit a weakness or critical hit. And considering MP management is already a big problem, this will be a huge help going forward. Cautious Cheer would be incredibly useful as well, but in our setup, Cerberus will unfortunately not get enough experience to get access to it quickly, and considering we can't carry it over to other demons since it's a unique spell, it's probably not as useful as some of you may have thought at first. Anyways, with the new setup we return to Lugaru to hopefully achieve better results. Unfortunately, we're still at the mercy of the RNG gods because an unlucky Axle Claw or him just straight up ignoring taunt can still easily result in yet another game over. The strategy for the most part is still the same as before. Cerberus and Jack Frost are responsible for dealing damage, Oni is our sponge, and now Bino tries to keep debuffs up. This usually works well until we get an unlucky hit and have to heal. None of my party members except now Bino has proper access to healing, which usually leads to having to drop a debuff in favor of keeping the party alive. Oftentimes, this is the beginning of the end, since drop debuffs usually result in higher damage or higher chance of the boss getting critical hits. Towards the end of the battle, most demons are also pretty much out of MPs, so we also switching Suanwu and Rakshasa in when that happens, but in the end, the result was always the same. After game overing several more times, here's a quick compilation again, eventually we got to a run that looked a little more promising. The boss has barely any HP left and we summon Flamis to the field to cast his Lahmu Matsui skill. A few more attacks should do it, and what happened? He dodges. This little piece of dodged my attack and of course wipes my entire party. Ah! Okay, I think I calmed down again. People like to joke about players being SMT'd by the game, and this may be a prime example of that. I've only been at this boss for about 3 hours at this point, but it's just so incredibly frustrating when you get wiped because of a miss. Even more so considering the battle can literally end on every single turn. I'm not going to show you every attempt here, so we'll just update the game over counter and we'll skip ahead a little. After 5 hours of grinding at the boss, we once again almost got him down. Again we summon Flamis to trigger the Lahmu Matsui, we throw our last skills at him and are finally able to beat the boss and continue on. This was by far the most annoying and hardest battle up to this point, not because of the battle itself, but because of the huge factor that RNG played into this, but luckily we finally made it through. We get a total of 3 levels and get up all the way to level 23 before continuing on for good. While the taunt strategy is really nice to exploit some of the enemy's AI, it obviously shouldn't be taken for granted, but we will see how it fares against the next boss, Fionn Cumhaill. Technically we can use Oni as our tank again, since Fionn also mostly uses physical attacks, but I had somebody else in mind and considering we could use a demon upgrade anyways, might as well try to get it. Again, to nobody's surprise, we're looking for high level demons with good magic stats, but as a tank I got somebody specific in mind, and that is Shikiuchi. Shikiuchi not only is level 29 and therefore much higher than Oni at 23, it is also a great magic user, which is rather nice considering Oni probably doesn't do much other than tanking in the upcoming fight. This time it took over 2 hours until we got the first useful one, but this one was rather nice with Loa, who is level 30 and has pretty decent magic stats. Since we usually use Serum up during fusion, we can also carry over Restore, which should also help against the growing MP problem we're facing. It took another 90 minutes for the next useful accident, and this was something I almost reset over because it looked to be just another slime, but at second glance it was not a slime, but a black ooze. This one is level 33, which is interesting considering it's 9 levels higher than Albino, and the highest you can get allegedly is a +7. Anyways, I'm not complaining because Black Ooze is literally the perfect tank for this battle. It resists physical, has a real high vitality stat, and also somewhat decent magic, so overall this is the perfect demon for the upcoming boss fights. Considering Serum Up is still rather useful as well, we are already done with our grind for now, and this time it only took, let me quickly check, 3.5 hours. Interesting, that felt much shorter. Anyways, let's add it to the counter and then head into the next boss fight against Fionn Cumhaill, where we hop in mid turn 1 because I accidentally forgot to turn on the recording, but luckily still noticed in time. As always, we start off our battle with Rosetsu Feast for max out debuffs, and then go to work using electricity attacks to maximize our press turns. Black Ooze sets up the taunt and starts tanking the incoming damage. Since Fionn Cumhaill uses pretty much only physical attacks, this is not a big issue. He can lower Black Ooze's defense occasionally by using Pierce Armor, but in this case we just guard with Black Ooze to add another extra layer of safety. Fionn Cumhaill can also raise his attack with Tarokasha, but we can just counter that by using another Tarunda again. When the boss draws Magatsui, we get a free turn since, again, the incoming attack can easily be blocked with a fire dampener. Thanks to Restore, the CU attacks basically take no MP as we gain back the 10 MP needed every time we hit the boss. His most dangerous attack is probably Mac and Luin, but with Black Ooze resisting physical, this one is not really a big danger either. Unlike Lugaru, he also doesn't seem to ignore the taunt, so this strategy for the most part is relatively safe, and yeah, what else can I say here? It did get a little dangerous towards the end when the enemy dodged a CEO, which kinda screwed up my turn pattern, but luckily Black Ooze managed to stay in there, so we can continue on like before. Towards the end we bring in Flamies for the luck Magatsui, and that's pretty much it. Surprisingly, we beat the boss in our very first attempt. I think this is the first and also probably only time in this challenge run that we managed to beat a major battle on our very first attempt. Nice, I like that. Better not get used to it though, since this is probably the exception. We gain another 3 levels on Albino, which takes us all the way to level 27, with all points being invested into Vitality yet again. Once we reach the Fairy Village, we complete the mandatory story quest, which gets us to level 28. This would also be where we would go for the Idun side quest in order to unlock her for fusion, but unfortunately this is not possible due to having to fight Loki first, so yeah, no best healer in this run for us. Level 28 will be the final level of Area 2 and the level we have to face Lahmu at. Lahmu is level 38 by the way, so we're looking at another 10 level difference here, so that is going to be a lot of fun. With that, we're obviously back into grinding for some more fusion accidents. Again, we're looking for magic heavy uses, ideally with access to either Mahama or Masan, to take care of the tentacles in phase 1. Phase 2 Lahmu is weak to fire, but we can inherit Agilao from a Jack-o'-lantern essence, which can be bought in the shop, so this is not that big of an issue luckily. The first useful accident took over 3 hours, but damn, it was an impressive one. We were able to fuse a level 39 Kurama Tengu. Not only does it have Masan and Wind Draco Strike, which is incredibly useful, but it is also a whooping 11 levels higher than Naobino. So much for the +7 cap that some sites speak of. Not that I'm going to complain, of course. About half an hour later, the next one follows with Lamia, who is level 36. A +8 fusion, and while she's not the perfect candidate, she's definitely very useful as well. There is also one more demon that is pretty much a must-have for this battle, and I was hoping to get this one early, but luckily it only took me 10 more minutes until we were able to snatch it too, and I'm talking about Forneus. Forneus is an absolute unit against Lahmu, draining ice and nulling dark skills, therefore only being weak to his electricity attack, which he will only use in phase 1 anyways, since his phase 2 Mazyonga will only be casted after drawing Magatsui first. This entire process took about 4 more hours, so let's add that to the counter as well. We get Agilao and Restore on everybody, Taunt on Forneos as well as Masan and Lamia, and then are pretty much set to head into the final battle of Area 2. The battle with Lahmu basically comes in 2 separate fights. In fight 1, you have to get rid of the tentacles first before being able to directly interact with the boss. The tentacles don't attack, and since you can't directly target Lahmu at this point yet, I thought that going with Rosetsu Feast here is probably not that useful overall. Before all that happens though, Lahmu always opens up with Sionga before the party has any chance to act. Since both now Albino and Lamia null electricity, we hope that the boss targets one of the two. If he hits Forneos with it, it's pretty much an instant reset. On my first attempt, I already made a pretty bad mistake. After setting up Taunt on Forneos, I completely forgot that Lahmu will use Babylon Curse on turn 3, which restores all tentacles to full HP, and because I went on the offense from turn 1, all of that was pretty much wasted. Shortly afterwards, Forneos was wiped from a Sionga, and that's the end of attempt number 1. Didn't get very far here though, to be honest, this was mostly on me, but hey, this is a learning process, right? Attempt 2 died early because Sionga and Kurama Tengu, followed by an insta-kill on Albino with Mudo. On attempt number 3, I played it a bit more strategically already. Kurama Tengu and Lamia are going to pass their turns, while Forneos and Albino set up buffs and debuffs. While Forneos debuffs the Tentacles defense with Marakunda, Albino will set up a double Tarukaja on both our attackers. Once Babylon Curse happens, we start going for the damage, but again, Lahmu wipes Forneos with a Sionga, and afterwards we get wiped thanks to a Mudo. It seems there is a rather high chance that Lahmu will always follow up Babylon Curse with Sionga, so either we guard with Forneos here to prevent the weakness hit, or we throw one of our electricity dampeners as safety means. For attempt number 4, we didn't even get that far though, since Kurama Tengu missed one of the tentacles with the very first attack, and Lahmu again proceeds to wipe Forneos and Albino right afterwards. Because of this, we made another change for attempt 5. Since Kurama Tengu and Lamia are not attacking the first 3 turns anyways, we bring back Loa to open up with Rosetsu Feast. While we can't target the boss itself, fully debuffing the tentacles makes it much more likely that we're going to hit all targets, and safety is definitely something we want from this battle. This time we also throw the electricity dampener to make sure Forneos stays in the battle, and of course now Lahmu uses Bufula. Thanks buddy. This time we manage to take out all the tentacles, at which point the boss itself becomes targetable. Lahmu barely has any HP in this phase, so we bring him down quickly, and once our Magatsui bar is full, we pop the Lock Magatsui before ending the battle. Theoretically, you could also use luck with Kurama Tengu since Genma demons also have access to it, but unfortunately you only get the Genma talisman after collecting 100 Mimen, and we just so happen to have access to only 99 at the moment. Anyways, this is it for part 1 of the battle, and if you thought that this was the hard part, you unfortunately are sadly mistaken. Since both Lahmu fights are separate battles, we gain 2 more levels here before entering battle number 2. In this one, Lahmu is now only weak to fire, which is why we have Achilaos on our attackers as well. In terms of attacks, he mostly stays the same, though he will only use Mazionga now after drawing Magatsui first, which makes it a lot safer for Forneos to tank attacks. Due to just using luck before, our Magatsui bar is also empty, so no Rosetsu Feast for now either. Because of this, we use Toronto twice to decrease the incoming damage as good as somewhat possible. The biggest issue now though is his new AoE almighty attack Silt of Ruin, which not only deals big damage, but also lowers everybody's accuracy by 1 stage. And if that wasn't bad enough already, he will always follow it up with Tentarufu, which can potentially confuse the entire party. Ideally, Nahobino doesn't get inflicted with it, so we can throw in Amrita Soda to heal the entire party, but unfortunately this is very unlikely, and yeah, as you can see, this battle was over rather quick. Now we're not going to go through every single attempt here, so let's skip forward to the next one that made it into fight number 2. After 2 more failed attempts in the first battle, I also decided to put Canopy Wheel on Nahobino. This reduces the incoming damage by a flat 30%, which could be quite useful and might be better than the double Tarunda against Silt of Ruin in battle 2. After getting insta-wiped by a Sionga on Forneos for 3 more times, we finally make it back into fight number 2. Unfortunately, I underestimated my damage output on Lahmu here and beat him before being able to pop the lock Magatsui, so we only get a single level this time around instead of the 2. I still wanted to use this as a practice battle, so I continued on with fight 2. Instead of doing double Taronda this time around, we only went with a single Taronda and Canopy Veil, and this actually reduced the incoming damage quite a bit, so this was definitely a good call. During this attempt, we also got luckier with only 2 demons getting confused. Since our Magatsui bar is also full now, might as well bring in Loa for a Setsu Feast to max out the debuffs as well. Even though the confusion is still really annoying, it's not that big of an issue since Lahmu starts wasting a lot of turns by either casting Bufula or Mudo on Fornius. Both Kurama Tengu and Lamia start damaging the boss with Achilao, while Fornius heals and taunts, and now Bino tries to keep the debuffs on the boss all the time, and this seems to work out pretty well at first. In case demons start to run out of MP, we also throw chakra drops with now Bino. Fights like this are where you start noticing how overpowered some miracles actually are. Having access to items with all party members would be a godsend right now. Anyways, when Lahmu draws Magatsui, it basically gives us a free turn since the following Mazionga can easily be blocked with an electricity dampener. This fight is actually going pretty smooth for the most part. Fornius is an incredible tank and I don't think this battle would be even doable without it. The biggest issue is keeping everybody's MP up while also debuffing the boss, but we're making good progress and are getting rather close to finish the fight off. Lahmu goes for another Silt of Ruin, but luckily Fornius dodges the attack and therefore also prevents the Tentarufu from happening. Once again we bring in Flamis for Kurama Tengu to activate luck and go for the last couple of hits and wait, what? No, that's not enough damage. No, come on, really? This is the first time I actually miscalculated the damage needed to finish the fight off. And of course, one more Achilao is enough to win, but obviously without the luck boost. Had I brought in Flamis for Fornius, it would have been fine, but yeah, that one is definitely on me. We still get 2 levels from this fight, getting up to level 31, and while we can advance in the game now, I'm sitting here thinking whether or not I am going to continue. On one hand, I screwed up the extra experience in both Lahmu fights, but overall, I think it doesn't even matter that much. I lost 1 additional level from the first fight, and I assume fight number 2 would have also got me 1 additional level at best, so that means had we nailed luck on both fights, we would probably be level 33 instead of 31 now. And considering how much of a mess this boss battle can be, and how much luck I had in this fight with Silt of Ruin missing Fornius right at the end, I decided to just keep going for now. I did however save on a new slot and keep the save just in case we get stuck and need to come back here again. We go through the next few cutscenes and end up in area number 3. Right at the start there is a jack-o'-lantern which exchanges chakra drops for gems. Unfortunately, the experience we get here is not enough to get us to level 32, but this spot is still important since you can redo this over and over again, and while you don't get any experience anymore, this is a great spot to get chakra drops once you can buy gems in the shop. There is also the Mokui side quest where you need to collect certain items, but unfortunately 2 of them are not reachable until we go through the next boss, so we will have to battle Yakumo, who is level 46 by the way, on level 31 only. This is a difference of 15 levels. I fear for the worst. So once again we're back to fusion accident grinding. As always, we're looking for high level demons, ideally in the low 40s. Since we now know that this is not impossible, getting access to Anubis, Silky or Valkyrie for example would be a pretty great start already. Yakumo mostly uses physical attacks again, and since there is no new demon with resist physical in sight, we will probably have to go back to Black Ooze as a tank, though I don't know how useful that is going to be considering its level is rather low compared to the boss as well. The first kinda useful demon happened relatively quickly after about 15 minutes with Eligor. Though Eligor is only level 37, he has good strength and a decent vitality stat for survivability. It was also at this point that I decided not to record my fusion accident attempts any longer, considering I already have tons of game footage of resetting over and over again cluttering up my hard drive, so we will just go through what I got eventually. After roughly 5 hours of grinding, we managed to get a Parvati as well as a power. While power is level 39, he has -6 dark potency, so he's probably not going to be useful for this fight either. The first plan is to go into the fight with Eligor and Black Draco Strike as DPS, while Parvati supports and overheals with Bowl of Hygeia. This way, we can hopefully tank some of the incoming attacks. Black Ooze, as mentioned earlier, will be our tank since it is the highest level demon with resist physical that we can access at this point. Again, we start the battle off with Rosetsu Feast and then bring Eligor in. Nahubino also inherited Marakukaja in the meantime, as I am pretty sure the extra defense buff is going to be needed as well. As you can see, the damage we do with Eligor is pretty low, and considering he's pretty much our only damage dealer, this is definitely going to take a while. Parvati either overheals with Bowl of Hygeia if possible, and also attacks with Mudon if she has free turns. Black Ooze's part is mostly to tank damage and throw in a toxic spray to lower defense and maybe poison the boss every once in a while. And here we can already see the biggest issue: Mist Rush. Just like Lugaru before, it is an attack that hits random enemies and it hits extremely hard, even with both buffs and debuffs up. Yakumo also likes to use Tarukaja, in which case he will always follow it up with Deathbound on the next turn, yet another AoE physical attack. Luckily we have access to 2 physical dampeners, which we can use to block the first 2 Deathbounds at least. Normal attacks as well as Fatal Sword can luckily be tanked by Black Ooze rather easily, even with the big difference in levels. There is a big problem though, or rather several problems. First of all, Mist Rush can easily kill the attempt at any given point if we get unlucky or if he crits one of the targets. That isn't the only problem though, because like I mentioned earlier, he likes to increase his attack with Tarukaja and follow it up with Deathbound on the turn after. Since we are out of physical dampeners rather quickly, we need to tank this, and with debuffs, buffs and a canopy wheel up, this is actually not as bad as I expected, but you might see the issue that comes up with the strategy here. Now Bino has to partially keep up the enemy's debuffs, the party's defense buffs, canopy wheel, and also regularly regenerate MP, and yeah, this is not going to work out in the long run. A Mist Rush quickly seals the deal and this attempt is over. I tried the strategy for about 5 times in total, but the result was always just like you have seen now. Since this was not going to work, I came up with another strategy. One of the biggest issues is that Yakumo gets to attack twice each turn, but what if we can occasionally prevent that from happening? Thanks to Mushiwu's essence, we can inherit Tetrakarn in one of our demons, and you might probably know where I'm going with this. With Taunt and Tetrakarn, we can instantly end his turn and reflect damage back at the boss if he attacks the party. This time, we also use Taunt with Naobino since he's the squishiest member in our setup, and the extra layer of safety is definitely a good idea. Just like before, Eligor is mostly here to dish out damage, while Power now uses Tetrakarn to shield our protagonist. The biggest problem with this strategy is that Tetrakarn costs 50 MP per use, so you need a constant supply of chakra drops from Naobino to keep the strategy up every turn. Regardless of all that, Mist Rush still completely ignores the taunt, and if you're unlucky, it doesn't even hit into the Tetrakarn at all. With our new setup, there isn't a lot of room for healers either, so Naobino needs to take care of this via item usage. While this setup looks to be way more consistent than the initial one, the biggest issue is still that we only have 1 DPS, which only deals around 70 to 80ish damage, and we have nowhere near enough items to keep the party alive for this long. After about 15 minutes of battling, we're only about a quarter through Yakumo's health bar, and eventually we just don't have the resources anymore to keep up healing, and game over once again. Since the strategy looked more promising, I tried it a couple of more times, 7 times in total to be exact, but again, the result was always the same. The hard truth was that the current demons were not going to cut it, and we have to go back to grinding fusion accidents. If we want to have a chance at this, we need at least 1 demon on level 40 plus. So we grind, and grind, and grind, and grind, but nothing ever happens. I have no idea what the chances are to get a 10 plus level fusion accident, but they must be ridiculously low because in the next 10 hours of grinding fusion accidents, I haven't gotten a single useful demon out of it. And I'm not even going to lie, at this point I was getting incredibly frustrated. I was almost ready to quit the run. Was this really going to end here already? Do I really want to grind fusion accidents over and over again for tens, maybe hundreds of hours without knowing when or if I ever get something good out of it? I thought about going back all the way to pre-Lahmu again, but would that even make a big difference? Is it worth going through this battle again for 1, maybe 2 extra levels? But honestly, at this point I wanted to do anything but grinding fusion accidents. So we go back all the way to before Lahmu and try to battle him again, this time with activating the luck Magatsui at the right moment in both fights. And to be honest, it wasn't even so bad. After getting wiped for a total of 7 more times, we make it through both fights with luck on attempt number 8, and while now Albino only gets to level 32 after the boss fight, the Jack-o'-lantern collection quests gives just enough experience to get Albino to level 33, so we're 2 levels higher than we were previously. With level 33, getting a 40 plus demon looks to be at least a little bit more likely now, right? Well, I think the game kinda felt sorry for me after not getting anything useful in 10 hours, because within the first hour of grinding at level 33, we managed to get a Silky, Anubis, and Valkyrie. Funnily enough, exactly the 3 demons I mentioned at the very beginning of the grind. To say I felt rejuvenated after this is probably an understatement. With this new setup, we went into the battle with Yakumo once again. We will still use our Taunt Tetrakarn strategy from before, with Silky playing the role of Tetrakarn support and Valkyrie and Anubis both doing damage, and just looking at the numbers here, you can tell how much of a difference this makes. We went from 1 DPS with 75-ish damage to 2 DPS with 100 to 130 damage. If Silky is free at the end of the turn, she can also cast Stone of Majesty on Anubis for a concentrated attack on the following turn, which deals almost 200 damage. Now Hobino's role is to keep up debuffs on the enemy and throw chakra drops on Silky. Mist Rush still happens occasionally, but usually doesn't wipe any party members, and thanks to Silky also having access to Diorama, she can assist when it comes to healing up. When Silky gets real low on MP, we can use one of the 3 chakra pots to fully refill her MP as well. Eventually, we're going to need to renew both Valkyrie and Anubis MP as well, but having Tetrakarn up takes priority over everything. When Yakumo draws Magatsui, we get a free turn once again since we can easily block the incoming next turn after throwing an electricity dampener. This usually also gives us some leeway to reapply buffs or do some extra MP healing. Towards the end of the battle, Yakumo will also start to use Galvanic Slash every now and then, but since now Albino natively nulls electricity, this is not a problem either. And I would love to tell you that Yakumo threw some kind of curveball in my way, but this strategy is honestly really safe and consistent. There are some tight situations here and there after a bad Mist Rush, but otherwise this is a really good battle. Once again, we bring in Flamist towards the end to activate the Luck Magatsui, and there we go everybody. We beat Yakumo on our very first try with level 33. If somebody would have told me that this makes that big of a difference, I would have immediately gone back to Lahmu. But at this point, I don't even care anymore, I'm just happy that this run continues on. Thanks to our efforts, we also gain a whopping 4 levels, getting all the way to level 37. Now, there are a couple of things we can do here before the next boss fight. First of all, we immediately game over after Huapo led us into a very nasty encounter, but that's not even what I meant. We still have the Mokoi side quest from before that we can complete now, and also the story related quest with Huapo. Unfortunately, the gained experience is not enough for another level up, so we have to go into the next boss fight at level 37. As for fusion accidents, I did play around for roughly 1 hour, but then I thought that our current setup might actually be able to get us through the fight with Cert. There are just a few changes we have to make. Obviously we want to have Bufula on our DPS, but as a tank we will go for our boy Eligor again, who unfortunately didn't really help a lot against Yakumo. With his high vitality stat and a fire immunity, he serves as a great tank for this one. The biggest issue with Cert might be his spamming of Maragi. Even though he wastes his turns doing so, he will still damage the entire party, even more so against Silky, who is weak to fire. Luckily, there is an easy way around that. We can grind Naga essences, which luckily come with a resist fire passive that we will slap onto our entire party. With all those preparations set, we're now ready to tackle Cert, who is level 49, so once again we have a 10 plus level difference. As always, we open up the battle with Rosetsu Feast and then start going to work on the boss. Eligor sets up the taunt to draw the single target fire attacks, and we're off. A Maragi with Canopy Veil only does 50-ish damage to the party, so this is a good start already. On turns where Eligor has nothing to do, we will also guard with him at the end, since Cert can also use single target physical attacks. One annoying thing about this battle is that Cert is the first boss to have access to the Kunda, which neutralizes all debuffs on the enemy. Since our Magatsui Gosh is filling rather slowly, we need to manually reapply debuffs with Naobino if that happens. While Maragi itself is not that dangerous, if he opens up the turn doing the Kunda first, it will still do a lot more damage than before, and if that happens twice in a row, it can easily wipe a party member as well. The most dangerous thing about this battle though is his only real physical attack, which is Heat Wave, and this one does huge damage on the entire party. Since he also seems to use it rather randomly, there isn't really any way we can properly prepare for the incoming damage, so we just have to eat it and hope nobody goes down, but as you can see, that is not so easy, and that's where we lose the first attempt. Attempt number 2 started off pretty similar. Maragi's biggest issue is that it stacks up on damage quickly. While one Maragi is not a huge deal, several in a row can and will happen, and they will still hit you rather hard, especially if Cert decides to Dekunda first, and without access to Meteorama at this point, healing up is not so easy. We mostly use single target heals by either doing Diorama with Silky or throwing items with Naobino, but eventually Heatwave will once again result in yet another game over. And this is the number 1 reason for a wipe, as you can see with the attempt number 3, where he also decided to crit Naobino and straight up one-shot him. Considering we do have access to Marakukasha at this point, I decided to put it on Eligor, hoping that the extra defense buff makes healing up a little easier, and considering Eligor doesn't really add anything to the battle except taunting, might as well make him a little bit more useful. For the first time, Cert also drew Magatsui in this attempt, which as always can be counted as a free turn, since we can easily block the incoming Marachidine with a fire dampener. While this new strategy does work out quite well, we are running into another issue here, which is MP recovery. Eligor does not have a lot of MP, therefore he will run out quickly when renewing Marakukasha regularly. Since we also used all chakra pots in the fight against Yakumo, our only means of MP regeneration at this point are chakra drops, which only heal for 50 MP, and with Naobino also being on debuff duty, we quickly run into a problem where we don't have enough press turns to keep all debuffs, buffs, and heals up. If several debuffs drop off, we can also switch in Loa again for Rosetsu Feast in case the Magatsui bar is full, so this definitely helps out as well, but if we get unlucky, Cert will just use the Kunda on the following turn and immediately wipe those away again. With all those problems, eventually Heatwave is what ends this attempt yet again, and while we did make some progress, we're still rather far off a victory here. This is actually trickier than I first expected. I was thinking that compared to Yakumo, this should be a little easier, but I guess there is nothing easy about this run in general. I did go back to Fusion Accident grinding for a little since I wasn't quite satisfied with Eligor's tank, and lo and behold, only 30 minutes in, we got a Sook, and this one might just be perfect for this battle. It is level 43, immune to fire, has much higher MP than Eligor, and also access to Diorama for an extra means of heal if needed. Dono Majesty is a nice bonus, though I'm not entirely sure if we're going to get a lot of chances casting it. While Sook does have much less vitality compared to Eligor, the higher level should make up for this, so I expect Sook to take similar or maybe even less damage from the boss, and this was pretty much confirmed during our next attempt. While we do get unlucky with Sook getting wiped early, we can still switch in Eligor as a backup while trying to recover and get Zook back into the battle as well. All those plans quickly went out the window though, as once again Heatwave happens, and yeah, this is definitely the biggest issue in this fight. I had another idea in mind though that could work out pretty well. For the past fights, we have always used Rosetsu Feast to fully debuff the boss, but we got access to something else in the meantime that might work even better here. I am talking about the Magatsui skill of the Avian Demons, which is Accursed Poison. Accursed Poison, similar to Rosetsu Feast, functions like Debilitate, though it only lowers all stats by one stage. The even more important part of the skill though is the ailments that it supplies. Accursed Poison is a guaranteed hit and can inflict all kinds of status ailments depending on the enemy's immunities, with the highest priority being Seal, and this might just be what we need here. Cert is not immune to Seal, and being able to hit this with 100% accuracy gives us a lot of leeway, not only in terms of debuffing and doing damage, but even more so when it comes to healing up the party or trying to revive party members in critical situations. While we could just use Accursed Poison with Soak since it's also an Avian Demon, we still fuse a Yadayu, so we can do it from the very first action of the battle already, and as you can see, this is paying off quite well. Cert can still use regular single target physical attacks, but everything else is blocked, which gives us a great start into the battle. Not only that, but since Zook doesn't really have a lot to do during those turns, we can also use its actions to use Donor Majesty on Anubis for some more increased damage. Other than that, the fight is pretty much the same as before. Do damage without DPS, debuff with Naobino, and taunt or heal with Zook. We get a lucky dodge by Anubis on the first heatwave, and I got a little excited seeing this strategy might be able to get us a win here. Unfortunately, that excitement didn't hold on for long, because Cert decided to not only heatwave on his first action, but then just ignore the taunt and target Naobino on his second action. Okay, that was unlucky, nothing I could have done about that, but generally this strategy seems to be pretty promising, so back in we go again. We're getting Cert closer to defeat with each attempt, and here is where the next problem arises. When Cert gets low on HP, he will also start using Ragnarok, which is a multi-hit random target fire attack. All of our party members can take one hit, but if somebody gets hit twice by it, they are probably done for, and that's exactly what happened when Silky went down. Luckily, recovery in this setup is much more manageable than before, so we were able to bring Silky back and continue the attempt, and for the first time ever, we get Cert into red HP. And then on the following turn, this happened. Not only did he heatwave once, but he heatwaved twice on the very same turn. I didn't even know this is possible. At this point, I was about to throw the controller. I was so confident that we might get it, only for the game to SMT us hard yet again. The next attempt ended to yet another unlucky heatwave, but on the following one, we're on pace for victory once again. We got Cert in red bar and are getting dangerously close to winning here. We only need one more turn to fill up our Magatsui bar and trigger luck, and we got this. This is what I would say if Cert wouldn't have decided to double heatwave the party out of their boots yet again. I swear we're slowly getting into Lugaru terms of annoying here. All of this wouldn't even be so bad if it wouldn't take 20 plus minutes for an attempt to even get there. We were this close, but I'm not going to give up on this one. The strategy definitely works. We just need to get a little more lucky, or like a little bit less unlucky, I guess. Anyways, on the following attempt, we once again got Cert into red bar, and as we are on our way to victory, he hits the heatwave again, but Zook luckily manages to dodge this time. I am pretty sure this would have been a double heatwave again, but with the dodge, the door to victory is wide open now. Since he usually doesn't heatwave for a few more turns, we should be somewhat safe now. We even put up an additional canopy wheel for extra safety, and while he does go for another heatwave only 2 turns later once again, we managed to get another lucky dodge, which prevents him from going for a second one. At this point, Cert is pretty much done, so we bring in Flamus in order to trigger the luck, and with a couple of more hits, the boss is finally down, and we win the battle. We gain 3 more levels and get up all the way to level 40. And as you can see, the screen is not progressing here for a little while because I literally jumped out of my seat, cursed at the boss hard because I was so happy that we finally made it through. While this fight was ridiculously hard, it was still a lot of fun since the factor of randomness, while still being there, was nowhere near as bad as Lugaru, for example. The completed quest gives us just enough experience to gain another level, so we're heading into the final boss fight of Area 3 at level 41. And everybody who has played this game knows the mechanics surrounding this area's final boss, Ishtar. To be honest, for just a split second I thought about battling her fully powered just for fun, but then I realized that the suffering in this run already reached tremendous amounts and will probably still continue on for a while, so might as well try to make my life a little easier, even if it's just for a single fight. We grab the Karabia and start deactivating the devices to weaken Ishtar. While Ishtar is probably one of the weakest bosses in the game, she is still level 52, and considering we haven't upgraded our demon since Yakumo, now would be a good time in doing so, though I'm not really looking for anything particular. All somewhat high level demons should do the trick. About an hour later, we already have everything we need. The first one we got was Yoshitsune, and I don't really think I need to explain how good this one is. Hasso Tobi is broken EF in this game as well. It's just a shame that he will fall back on levels quickly, since I would have loved to use him a while longer. The next good one we got was the one whose name I can't say unless I wanna get demonetized, but you all see who I'm talking about. Her having an electricity immunity as well is nice, but not really needed. Last but not least, we also got a Kaiwan. While this one isn't necessarily special, it does come with Mudon and a +3 dark potency, so it's definitely useful as well. Since defeating Zerg also unlocked the ability to buy gems in the item shop, we finally have a fast means to grind chakra drops, as we can exchange 2 fire gems for a chakra drop at the Jack-o'-lantern right at the start of Chiyoda. Once we got everything set up, we head into the battle with Ishtar. Thanks to cutting off all devices, she only gets to have a single press turn. Not only that, but her most dangerous skill, Dreadful Gleam, is also locked, and this one would have hurt considering it pierces and can also inflict seal. As for strategy, we taunt with Naobino in this battle since Ishtar loves to spam electricity attacks. She will also use Hamon occasionally, but since Naobino also resists Slight, he is the perfect taunt candidate for this battle. The other 3 are basically on the attack. The mages generate press turns hitting Ishtar's weakness, while Yoshitsune helps Naobino with debuffing and uses Hasso Tobi on all other turns. When she charges Magatsui, we just throw a light dampener to negate the incoming attack and continue on. And yeah, that is honestly pretty much everything there is to this battle. Just continue on like this, pop the luck Magatsui on the last turn, and win the battle on the very first try. This was rather unspectacular, but I still think I made the right choice by deactivating all the devices. This run is already hard enough as it is. We gain another 3 levels from the battle and 1 more from the quests, so we finish up area 3 of the game at level 44. The next upcoming area is the Demon King's Castle, and this is probably my least favorite part of the game. While I do wish there were more dungeons in the game, the platforming makes this part way more annoying than it needs to be. Luckily from this point on, we don't need to be afraid of random enemies any longer. Those who paid attention to the game might have noticed that we have been carrying a Shikiuchi with us for a while already, and the reason for that is that on level 33, Shikiuchi learns Estoma, and this is going to make overworld navigation so much more comfortable. Not being able to get ambushed by enemies or accidentally running into them is so nice. I wish we could have gotten this earlier, but better late than never, I guess. Before going into the next battle, I once again tried getting new demons via fusion accident, but after about 30 minutes, I realized that my setup should be good enough to carry me through the next fight, so I just stopped trying and continued on. The next mini-boss encounter is against Chernobog, and while he gets 4 press turns, this is not a real issue. The reason for that is that with one exception, all his attacks are single target physical attacks, so we once again make use of our Taunt Tetrakarn combination to lure his attacks in, reflect them back, and immediately end his turn that way. Since a lot of the boss's moves are also debuffs, they get reflected right back at him, which makes keeping debuffs up much easier as well. Once again, we used enemy's light weakness as well as Hasotobi from Yoshitsune to generate additional press turns and put out some good damage. Just like before, the biggest issue is that this strategy is very heavy when it comes to MP consumption, so we need to stack up on chakra drops to make sure we have enough to make it through the fight. When the boss charges up for Magatsui, we throw a dark dampener to prevent the incoming damage, and here is where I made my first mistake. Since most bosses only have 2 press turns, I completely forgot that the dampener only removes 2 of them, and once we block the Mamudon, he starts creating party members left and right. The fact that I thought it's unnecessary to renew taunt on this turn specifically also didn't make things any better, so I decided to throw the attempt and tried yet again. On the second try, I made sure the taunt is up, and I also decided to guard with Naobino, and while he decided to occasionally ignore the taunt, everybody was still up by the end of the turn, so we continue on just like before. Towards the end, he tried to screw the party over one last time by using Blight, which is his only AoE move, but luckily everybody managed to stay alive. After removing the poison, we continue on, bring in Kurama Tengu for the Luck Magatsui, and end the fight on our second attempt. Now Hobino gets 2 more levels, going from 45 to 47, and we continue on exploring the Demon King's castle some more. You might have noticed that I swapped in Lugaru towards the end of the fight as well. He was the one demon I got during fusion accident grinding just before, and while he didn't serve a big purpose against Chernobog, he will be incredibly useful against Aroak, but more on that in a few. We play some more Windy Blowy until we reach the final room and prepare for the boss Aroak. Like mentioned earlier, we already got a Lugaru, which is great to use here. While Soufflé d'Eclair has great base damage, I think it's even the spell with the highest magic base damage in the entire game, it's not really useful due to his low magic stats, so we will inherit Storm Draco Strike for proper damage here. After only about 30 minutes of fusion accident grinding, we also get access to Chernobog, who we just beat before. Chernobog, while not being the best option, has a good level and decent magic stats, so we will put Ceodyne on him, and that is pretty much all we need here. We also stack up on chakra drops again using the Jack-O-Lantern and Chiyoda, where you can trade in 2 fire gems for a chakra drop. Since we're finally able to buy gems, we basically have an unlimited supply of chakra drops as long as we got enough money to spare. Now to the Aroak battle. He always starts the battle by summoning 2 Dekarabias, and this would be a huge issue since does not only have access to Archidyne, but can also use Megidola. Luckily, this won't be a problem for us at all. As always, we start the battle throwing out Rasetsu Feast to fully debuff the enemy, and then start going to work using our electricity attacks. Our tank for this battle will be Forneus, who already served us greatly back against Lahmu, and once again he is the perfect choice for this battle as well. Aroak will always either use a single target physical or ice attack, and with Forneus draining ice, as well as repelling physical damage thanks to the Tetrakarn, we can immediately end the enemy's turn before the Dekarabias ever get a chance to attack. With this strategy in place, we can completely wall the boss. Physical attacks will get reflected, and ice attacks will get drained, and there is nothing the boss can do about it. The only time things get a little tricky is when he starts drawing Magatsui, since the null from the dampener only removes 2 press turns, giving 1 Dekarabia a turn. Technically, Dekarabia should always use Masakukasha since Aroak's evasion is debuffed, and the buff actions take priority over damaging moves, but since the boss is almost down at this point, we bring in Kurama Tengu and finish the fight off on our very first attempt before we ever get the chance to find out. Now Bino gets 2 more levels, going to 49, and we're done with the Demon King's castle. Not going to lie, Taunt is definitely the MVP of this challenge run, and I very much doubt this would be even close to doable without it. There is one more fight left to go before we reach the final area of the game. Before heading to the Summit of the Gods, we once again go for some fusion accident grinding. Since I'm pretty sure both Lugaru and Chernobog are still going to deal decent amounts of damage, I was mostly looking for some kind of support demon, and after around 30 minutes we got a Yatagarasu, so off we are into the next fight against Abdiel. Now, the Abdiel fight is a little more special in terms of Naobino having a passive taunt for the entire battle. Abdiel's AI will always target Naobino with either physical or fire attacks. Since we still have to resist fire from the Cert battle on Naobino, we got this part covered, and Tetrakarn once again takes care of the physical side. Since she exclusively uses single target attacks, there luckily isn't much we need to do here. It is still important to keep track of a turn order, since every third turn, Abdiel will use Light's Descent, which is a very strong AoE light attack, but luckily dampeners take care of that. Considering you can only buy 3 dampeners of each element though, this basically means we have to beat Abdiel within 11 turns, since on turn 12 we won't have any way to nullify this attack any longer. Eventually, Abdiel is also going to draw Magatsui and use Miragidyne, but again, a fire dampener takes care of this. The Magatsui drawing also pushes her Light's Descent action back for a turn, so we will have a 4-turn window instead of a 3-turn one when this happens. Basically, the battle is relatively easy as long as you keep your turn order in check. Once we use the last light dampener, Abdiel is almost down already, so we should be good on DPS. Again, we bring in Kurama Tengo for the Luck Magatsui, and once again we are able to beat yet another boss on our very first attempt. Unfortunately, we only get a single level from this battle going to 50, so this will definitely be a rather big problem, but more on that in a few. When we got past Cert, I was pretty sure that the upcoming battles were going to be much easier, but with those out of the way now, we're off into the last area of the game, and oh boy am I afraid of what is coming up. Until now, we usually had a level difference of roughly 10 levels compared to the boss. I think Yakumo was the biggest so far with a difference of 13 levels. Well, now we got a problem, because the next mandatory encounters are the battle against the gods, trying to get the keys needed to continue on, and each of those is level 72, so we're looking at the 20+ level difference. While there are a couple of side quests in Taito, which might give us another level or two, this is still going to be a big problem, especially considering that the upcoming fights won't get any easier at all. Anyways, once we get to Taito, Tao joins the party and we start exploring the area. This is also where we're going to use the only glitch of this run. When trying to cross the barrier towards the Temple of Eternity, the game checks if you are in possession of the 3 keys and only lets you pass if you got them. However, the barrier for this check is rather small, so by running towards it and hitting the home button continuously, we can generate enough lag for Naobino to clip past the barrier and just continue on after getting the message from Amanosako. While you can access the Temple of Eternity early this way, you're not able to complete the game like this, since the game still checks if you got all keys in possession and only spawns the bosses if you do so. So we basically only do this to get access to the late game essences in those areas early, since they might be rather useful. There is also this mechanic with the time-stopping doors and such, but luckily we have access to Estoma, so we can completely ignore the dungeon's intended mechanics and just clip past everything easily. Like mentioned before, bosses don't spawn unless you got all the keys, so the Metatron fight here is not available yet. In our case, this is good though, since this means we can also just skip past this part and enter the Empyrean without having to lock in an ending yet. Thanks to this, we can also easily collect all the essences from the Empyrean without having to worry about anything just yet. Technically, you can go all the way to the Empyrean throne room, but without the triggers from before, nothing is happening here yet either, so we still have to go through everything like the game intended. To be fair, it's not like we'd be able to stand any chance against the final bosses anyways at our current level, but I just wanted to mention that for clarity's sakes. Once we raided all the essences, we returned to Taito to explore the area some more. There is another side quest here with Kaya no Hime where you can trade in 2 beads for a chakra pot. This is going to be a great source of chakra pots, though beads are much harder to come by compared to fire gems, so I'm not all too sure how much we will actually use that. After going through pretty much all collection side quests we are allowed to do, we barely get enough experience to hit level 52, so this is the level we have to fight the first god at. We're looking at a 20 level difference, and somehow I am afraid that this is not going to end well. When I initially started this run, my thought process was that if we make it all the way to Taito, this is probably where the run ends, but let's see if we're still able to somehow pull through regardless. We also collect the last couple of Mements here, since the reward for grabbing all of them is a full 4x Balm set, and additional stats are always very much appreciated. Since we got pretty much everything we can do at this point covered, we need to head into the battles against the gods next. Now, in case it wasn't obvious already, with this kind of level difference, we absolutely have to fusion exit and grind some demons. There are 3 potential demons I'm looking for to continue on for now. One is Fafnir on level 60, one is Arahabaki on level 62, and the last one is Siegfried on level 63. Technically, Girimekala on 66 would be great too, but I doubt we're going to be able to fuse an accident with a plus 14 level demon. Considering Fafnir is only a plus 8, I figured this would be the first one we get, and oh boy did this process take forever. It took a total of 6 hours of fusion accident grinding until we got the first wanted demon, and to my surprise it wasn't Fafnir, but it was Arahabaki, so we managed to grind another plus 10 level fusion accident. The reason I wanted either Arahabaki or Siegfried is that they are the first demons to either null or drain physical, and I had a very specific strategy in mind. Since we did manage to get Arahabaki, our first god battle of choice is going to be Odin, and the reason for that lies within Odin's AI pattern. Odin has access to some very nasty attacks, including Charge, Concentrate, Thunder Rain and Gungnir, which straight up pierces physical resistance. There is a way to manipulate this battle though. Odin will only use Gungnir and Thunder Rain after using either Charge or Concentrate first. Charge and Concentrate are always going to be used on the second press turn though, so if we can prevent Odin from getting a second press turn, both Charge and Concentrate never happen, and therefore there is also no Gungnir or Thunder Rain happening on the following turn either. And this is pretty much what you're looking at right now. Odin's AI is also scripted to always attack the party member with the lowest HP remaining, so by going in with now Bino nearly down, we can guarantee that he will always be Odin's target. Since we already learned that he never uses Charge and Concentrate on his first turn either, this leaves Hades Blast or a regular physical attack that we can repel thanks to Tetrakarn, and Seodyne that now Bino nulls natively. With Arahabaki also nulling physical, it practically takes no damage, and Odin's turn will always end after the first action, thanks to every attack of him either being repelled or nulled. And while we don't do a lot of damage with our party, the reflected damage from Tetrakarn deals roughly 250 damage back to the boss. Now Odin has a total of 18,000 HP, and while this strategy is super safe in terms of incoming damage, I am not sure we have enough MP regeneration items to keep the strategy up all the way until he is down. Well, let's skip ahead for about 35 minutes in this battle to find out. Odin at this point is already in red bar, but he still has some HP left and we're pretty much all out of MP items. It seems that our item stock is just barely not big enough to carry us through the entire battle. Once all our items are gone, we bring in our good old buddy whose name I can't pronounce if my life depended on it for the luck Magatsui, but as expected, it is not enough to win the battle. Since the strategy was pretty safe, I thought to myself, if this works with a 2-party member setup, it should also work with a full party setup, so for attempt number 2, we add both Dominion and Titania that we also got during Fusion Accident grind to the mix, mainly because both of them already come with Tetrakarn. For Dominion, there is another argument to be made though. You might think that if we don't have enough items for a 2-party member setup, how are we going to be able to maintain MP on a full party member setup? Well, the secret partially lies with Dominion being a divine type. The Magatsui skill for divine demons is Sea of Stars, which is an AoE skill that regenerates, I think it's 30% of every party member's max MP. Considering we're only repelling damage anyways, the Magatsui bar was pretty much unused in my first attempt, so this is a great way of conserving items, at least to some extent. We still need to somewhat regularly throw chakra drops or pots on the party members to keep their MP up, but Sea of Stars definitely helps tremendously in cutting down the item usage needed. Not only that, but because we now have 3 targets that repel physical attacks, Odin obviously also takes way more damage from Hades Blast compared to before. Other than that, the strategy is still the same as before. Go in with now Bino having the lowest HP to draw in the Seodynes, and hope he uses Hades Blast as often as possible to reflect the most amount of damage back at the boss. This all worked well until Odin suddenly uses Thunder Rain. I was pretty sure that he only uses Thunder Rain after Concentrate the turn before, but seemingly this seems to be incorrect. He didn't use it at all in my first attempt, which may be due to Thundering hitting 2 to 5 times, and with in the previous attempt only having a 2 party member setup initially, the AI might have decided that Ceodine would do more damage overall, but what do I know? Anyways, while Thundering does add some RNG to the battle, it's not something that we can recover from. Since the minion also nulls electricity, we only have 2 potential targets that can be wiped, and with his AI still focusing on Naobino mostly, recovery is not that big of an issue. Odin will also draw Magatsui once after losing roughly 60% of his HP, but once again, the incoming Mabufo can easily be blocked with an Ice Dampener. Once Odin gets very low on HP, we need to switch party members for the Luck Magatsui. The timing on this one is rather tricky though, and because I am very good at this game, I completely screwed it up the first time, and Odin wiped himself before we were able to activate the Luck Magatsui. While we technically did defeat Odin here, I definitely want to get the bonus experience from Luck, so we have to redo this fight again. What's even more shocking though is that without Luck, Naobino only gets a single level from this fight. With a level difference of 10 plus, we get the full experience multiplier, but it's still only enough to gain us a single level? I don't like the looks of this at all. Since it's almost 2 full levels though, I am pretty sure with luck we should be able to get at least 3 levels out of this one, but it's still nearly not as much experience as I initially expected. Anyways, back to the Odin fight. Like mentioned before, the trickiest part will be activating luck at the right time in order to maximize our experience gain from this. Even more so, because reflected damage is RNG dependent and the party itself barely does any damage. On the next attempt, I decided to tag out both the minion and Titania once Odin got really low on HP to have more control over the amount of damage reflected. Once again, we bring in our luck user to activate Magatsui, and while we're not able to beat the boss with our attacks, the following reflected Hades Blast is enough to win the battle. The only problem with this? Luck only lasts until the end of our turn, so by the time Odin offs himself, the effect is gone and we once again only gain regular experience just like before. Great. So we actually have to beat Odin with our party that on average does like 30 to 40ish damage with their attacks. How are we even going to be able to time this correctly? Well, the answer is something I absolutely hate to do, but I feel like it's the only way we can achieve this. Damage counting. So we get the calculator out and start going to work again. You may have also noticed that we moved Naobino from the 3rd to the 2nd party member slot. This makes tagging demons in and out slightly easier since Naobino gets his turn earlier and we can conserve some more half-press turns that way. Anyways, we skip towards the end since we talked about pretty much everything concerning this battle, and again we only have Naobino and Arahabaki on the field for better damage control. Odin at this point has about 120 HP left, so ideally we want a regular attack to be reflected, so we can win the battle on the following turn, but of course Odin decides to use Hades Blast and once again wipes himself, so no bonus experience yet again. Attempt number 4 is pretty similar, though this time we kept Titania in. We throw a physical dampener instead of Tetrakarn here since Odin is in the HP range where he might wipe himself, but not low enough yet for the party to beat him. Arahabaki uses Megiddola, which does roughly 70 damage to get him down a little further. At this point, Odin has about 90 HP left, so a Megiddola plus Sandine from our luck user or a Force Gem should be enough. So the only thing that could go wrong here is Arahabaki missing with the Megiddola, and I just jinxed it. I was ready to throw the fight at that moment, but then I realized that I haven't activated the Magatsui skill yet. So we pass and set up another physical dampener to try again on the following turn. The next turn Megiddola does hit, we activate the Luck Magatsui, and while Sandine is not enough, the falling Force Gem does take down Odin and we finally manage to beat this battle, while also getting the full experience bonus. As expected, we get 3 levels now instead of just 1, and hit level 55 before continuing on. Okay, good. 1 down, 2 more to go, and considering Zeus in my opinion is by far the hardest of the 3, we're looking at Vasuki next. For Vasuki we once again need to fusion accident grind. Like mentioned earlier, I definitely want to grab a Fafnir here which nulls poison, which should be much easier now that it's only a +5 level difference anymore. At least that's what you would think. While you watch some random footage here, let me quickly tell you about my misery. I grinded fusion accidents for a total of 10 hours and literally got every demon between level 57 and 64 except the Fafnir I was looking for. In fact, I was so desperate to get Fafnir for the null poison that I didn't even realize that I already got a demon that would work just as fine or maybe even better around 4 hours into the grind. After not getting Fafnir for 10 hours, I said, okay, screw it, let's look at what we got, just give it a go. And then I realized, wait a minute, I got Siegfried. Siegfried drains physical. Vasuki's damaging attacks with the exception of the Mabufodine are all single target physical attacks. Why do I not just use Siegfried? Why did I waste so much time? I could have been done hours ago. Anyways, once clarity set in, I finalized my party setup and gave Vasuki a shot. Luckily during the grind, we also got a Throne which is pretty much the perfect demon for the boss. Throne has good magic stats, +4 fire potency, which is just what we need. With that being said, let's check how our first attempt against Vasuki went. We start off with Rosetsu Feast again to fully debuff the enemy and switch Tao back in. Tao is in the first spot since she nulls Charm and has Mapatra to take care of charmed party members in need. Throne is our main DPS for this fight since its Archidine does pretty good damage while Tao serves as a backup damage dealer in case she has nothing else to do. Siegfried is our tank and will once again try to draw the majority of Vasuki's attacks in to immediately end his turn. While Siegfried does not null poison, which Vasuki loves to use, this is not a problem at all since Vasuki will almost always follow up the Toxic Spray with Venom Chaser, which is a physical attack and therefore immediately ends the boss's turn. Now Hobino once again is responsible for keeping debuffs up and throwing MP regeneration items onto everybody if needed. Unfortunately, the taunt is not 100% guaranteed, so Throne got wiped pretty early in the fight, but since this is the exception and Vasuki wastes a lot of his turns anyways, recovery is rather simple. The nastiest combination is when Vasuki uses Makajima on and Sexy Dance on the same turn. Tao can get charmed, but she can't get sealed, which blocks her from using Mapatra, so in this situation, we have to hope that Naobino pulls through the charm and is able to get the Amrita shower off. But even if that doesn't work, Vasuki is no big threat since oftentimes he will just spam status moves without even trying to attack the party at all. Tao will also occasionally use Light of Order to heal up and also fully buff the entire party, which also increases the damage inflicted on the boss. More often than not, Vasuki will go for a regular attack on Siegfried, which immediately ends his turn, so we have way less issues healing up and keeping the party alive compared to a lot of the other bosses. When the boss passes a certain HP threshold, I don't know the exact number, he will also start using Slumber Vortex, which can put both sleep or mirage on the party members inflicted. As long as Tao is here though, we can once again heal it off easily with Mapatra though. The first time the boss draws Magatsui, the battle is already almost over. At this point, I started thinking whether to play it safe and throw a dampener, or try to go for the win. Considering Vasuki gets 4 press turns and the dampener only removes 2 of them, I decided to try my luck here, quite literally. So we bring in our beloved luck user, activate the Magatsui, and there we go. We beat Vasuki on our very first try. Now, admittedly, Vasuki is definitely the weakest of the 3, but I was not expecting a first try victory here. But hey, who am I to complain? Anyways, thanks to the experience boost, we get another 3 levels on Naobino, which puts him at level 58. So we went from a 20 level difference on the first god encounter to a 14 level difference for the last one. The only problem with that? The last one remaining is Zeus, and everybody who played this game knows how much of a pain he can be. In my opinion, he's definitely the hardest of the trio, so good thing we saved the best thing for last. Now, one more thing I want to mention here, since people are probably interested, is whether this run will go through Shiva or not. And the answer to this is no, and the reason for that is rather simple. First of all, obviously we're only doing mandatory battles, and Shiva and every other quest that is needed in order to unlock the true neutral ending are optional battles and therefore not allowed. But even if we would allow those, the portal to Shiva doesn't even let you through before you reach level 80, which is higher than we're probably going to get in this run at all. So sorry to everybody who was looking forward to that, but let's be real. This run has already been brutal enough, so I can gladly skip over the pain that is Shiva. Anyways, looking at things ahead now, we need to get through Zeus first. Since we pretty much spent all of our chakra pots, we have to get new ones, and the easiest way for that is trading them for 2 beads with Kaya no Hime. Beads are not that easy to come by either, but you can grind them off Yakshinis in the second area, so at least we have one source to get them from. Other than that, it's the same as always. Raid vending machines to get a good stock of Maka, and then try to get some more fusion accidents. I am pretty sure we'll stick with Siegfried since Zeus also likes to use physical attacks rather often, but I would like to have a different damage dealer, ideally something high leveled with force potency on it. By the way, I also noticed that I completely forgot to do the quest with Yatagarasu. Once you give it the 3 ambrosias, not only do you unlock it as navigator, but the extra experience we get is just enough to push us to level 59. Not the big difference maker, but every level counts, so I'll happily take it. Luckily the fusion accident grinding this time didn't take as long as the previous time either. After a little more than an hour, we managed to fuse a Skadi. While Skadi doesn't have any force potency, with a high magic stat and level 67, this is definitely something we can work with. Like mentioned earlier, we keep Siegfried and obviously Tao, and with that, we're off into the last boss battle of Taito. This time, we open up the battle with a cursed poison again. Luckily Zeus does not null seal, so this is a great way to mitigate incoming damage and also give us an easier time to recover, which we will definitely have to do lots of times in this battle. The strategy here is similar to Vasuki before. Tao heals, Skadi is our new main damage dealer, now Bino is on debuff and MP healing duty, while Siegfried tries to draw in as many physical attacks as possible, while also chipping in some damage in between. This is also when I realized that I forgot to put a force spell on Tao, but since this is more or less a first test attempt anyways, I figured might as well continue to get accustomed to the boss's attack patterns and such. In the early stages of the battle, Zeus will either use Maziodyne or a physical attack which will either be Brave Blade, which is good, or Panta's Bane, which is the less ideal one. Panta's Bane not only is an AoE attack, but also debuffs the entire party's attack and defense by 1 stage. Luckily Light of Order from Tao can easily counteract that, but we want to save MP for the later parts of the battle, so seeing this attack doesn't really get me excited at all. When Zeus draws Magatsui, he will once again use Maziodyne, so we throw up an electricity dampener to block it as usual. This is also the point where he enters the next stage of the battle, where he goes absolutely nuts. He gains 2 new attacks here. Madness Glint, which hits 2 to 5 times and can also put Panic and Seal on the party members hit with it. And here you really want to get a lucky dodge, because if you don't, it gets even worse. After Madness Glint, he usually likes to follow up with Impalus Animus. This means his next attack, which is always Maziodyne, will not only be buffed by a multiplier of 1.8, it also pierces, which means we have no way to avoid this at all. Because of this, we throw up Canopy Wheel, which we have carried on Albino for a long time already, but barely ever used until now. As a reminder, Canopy Wheel reduces all incoming damage by 30%, and this is honestly the only way I can see the party surviving a piercing Maziodyne. And as you can see, the party is barely able to take the hit, and that is with the party fully buffed, the boss fully debuffed, and also the 30% damage reduction from Canopy Wheel. I really don't like the looks of this. Luckily Zeus oftentimes follows it up with a regular physical attack, which will get drawn by Siegfried, so this gives us some time to recover. Ideally you also have your Magatsui bar full at this stage, so you can put a Cursed Poison back on. Having 1 or 2 turns where you don't have to be afraid to be wiped is great, and gives us some more leeway to get everything back together. The biggest issue at this point is that we regularly need to use Light of Order to heal and rebuff, but since the spell costs a whopping 150 SP, Tao runs out relatively quickly, so we need to use Chakra Pots and later on Somas to keep her SP up. The next piercing Maziodyne wiped Tao, but luckily at this point our Magatsui bar is full, so we bring in Yatagarasu only for Zeus to immediately annihilate it with Brave Blade. Guess Zeus really doesn't like being sealed at all. We still try to recover, but the falling Madness Glint once again wiped Yatagarasu, and at this point I decided to throw the attempt. Not all too bad for a first try, but the biggest issue I see here is that we won't have enough MP regenerating items to last us through the entire battle. Light of Order needs way too much MP, but luckily we can decrease that to some extent. I have been collecting sutras on my way pretty much the entire game, but haven't used a single one so far since I wasn't sure when the right time would be. Well, I am pretty sure the right time is now, so we throw healing sutras on Tao to get her to +5 healing potency, which reduces the MP cost from 150 to 119. So basically every 5th cast of Light of Order is now free. Not only that though, we also use Lachesis Essence on her for a boom boost to increase the duration of all buffs for another turn. We had several instances where we only used Light of Order because the buffs were about to run out, so I figured this is probably a good way to further help with the MP problem. Now, I was not expecting this to fully solve the battle and give me a win, but I still wanted to see if we can make it maybe a little bit further this time around, so we returned to the battle with Zeus yet again. Also this time around, I actually remembered to put a force spell on Tao as well. I went with Sandma instead of Sandine since the damage is not the highest anyways, and the tier 2 spell needs quite a bit less MP compared to the tier 3 spell. We skip ahead into phase 2 where Zeus starts using Madness Glint again. Another adjustment we made here is not using Light of Order when buffs are still up. If the party gets damaged, we throw a bead chain with Naobino to heal everybody up. Bead chains, just like chakra pots, can be acquired by trading items, so we can use those rather freely. Again, we luckily tank the fully powered Maziodyne and are able to put up a Cursed Poison again on the following turn, so we got some time to recover now. If you are lucky, the seal can sometimes last up to 3 turns, so this is a great way to also get damage in without having to worry about any backlash. Once you are about 2/3 through his HP, he will enter his last phase where he now also gains access to Luster Candy to fully buff himself. And while you may think that this makes things even worse, it is actually not that big of a problem. He usually likes to use Luster Candy after Madness Glint, which means the chance of getting Impellus Animus is not as high compared to before. It definitely also helps that we managed to dodge Madness Glint twice in a row, once with Tao and once with Scotty. Zeus is already in red bar, but still has enough HP for me to trigger Cursed Poison one last time. I would like to get full Magatsui bar on the turn where we beat him, since stalling in this fight is probably not going to go well for very long. And just as I was hoping, the bar gets full when Zeus is pretty much done. He goes for Madness Glint and Impellus Animus one last time, but we should be able to deal enough damage to win the fight now, so we heal the confusion, switch out and activate the Luck Magatsui, and 2 more attacks are enough to win the last battle in Taito against Zeus on only our 2nd attempt. Not going to lie, I was not expecting to get through this battle this quickly. Zeus is by far the hardest of the 3, so I was ready to be stuck here for a while, but the combination of a good strategy, combined with some luck, again literally, made it work. We gained 2 more levels to 61, and with the extra experience from the completed quest, getting us to level 62. And the only thing we still have to go through is the Temple of Eternity and the Empyrean. Oh wait, right, we already did that, so we could theoretically warp straight all the way to Metatron now. Before we do that though, we want to restock on items as well as get some new demons. Siegfried and Scotty are great, but they're not going to help me that much against Metatron, so let's see what we can squeeze out this time around. Metatron is the first boss to not have any weaknesses, so my initial thought was going physical with my damage, and on level 69, nice, we could get Futsunushi, who also null slide, so that would work perfectly, but let's not talk about it too much, or else we run into another Fafnir fiasco. And this time it didn't even take too long. I didn't get Futsunushi yet, but within 10 minutes of grinding fusion accidents, we get access to our favorite challenge run demon, Giri Makala. Just like in every other game, he repels physical and also has great strength. What's even more important though is we can use our buddy Giri to grind chakra pots. Remember how I earlier said we need to grind beads from Yakshinis to trade them for chakra pots? Well, not any longer, since Giri Makala can drop them directly, so by talking to them in battle, we have a slight chance to get a chakra pot as a reward. Granted, the chances are not very high, but I'd much rather do this than grinding beads and trading them. Another good thing is that Giri Makala also regularly gives you some good maka, so we also gain nice money on the way, which is always needed during fusion accident grinding. Once we got enough pots, we're back on the demon grind, and while we didn't really get anything useful at the beginning, we did manage to get the Futsunushi I wished for after about 2 hours. I did grind for another hour because I was hoping for another high-leveled physical demon like a Yamato no Orochi or something, but then I thought I could also just go in and give it a try with Giri Makala instead. Unfortunately, Giri has light weakness, so we used Mishagui's essence to cover up for that. We also inherited both Critical Aura and Severing Bite on both attackers from Lugaru's essence. Like mentioned earlier, Metatron is the first boss without weakness, but we still want to somehow generate press turns occasionally and deal good damage. Metatron is level 76, so we have a level difference of 14 going into the fight. Again, we open up with a Cursed Poison to seal the boss, but for a different reason this time around. The only damaging attack Metatron uses in phase 1 is Mahamon, and with 2 party members nulling and the other 2 resisting light, this wouldn't even do that much damage. The much more annoying part is that Metatron has access to both the Kaja and the Kunda, so he can easily just nullify all buffs and debuffs, and this could become a huge issue rather quickly once we get deeper into the battle. Both physical attackers first use Critical Aura and then follow it up with Severing Bite. Critical Aura not only guarantees a crit on the next turn, but also gives you 100% accuracy, so not getting any unlucky misses is definitely nice to have. Severing Bite also has much higher base damage when it crits, so those two combined together work really well. Just like before, Nahobino is here to debuff the enemy and throw items, while Tao buffs and heals the party, and also throws in a Taronda every now and then. Once Metatron charges Magatsui, he enters phase 2, and while the following Mahama Barrier can easily be blocked with a light dampener, the battle just got a lot harder. Metatron now gets access to his signature attack Fire of Sinai, which can hit between 3 and 7 times, and like with Zeus earlier, it can easily wipe a party member. The bigger issue here is that unlike Zeus, Metatron will not prepare for his attack and will use it randomly at all times, which means we have a much harder time predicting what his next attack is going to be. Luckily, we can still seal him with a Cursed Poison, which once again gives us some leeway that we're definitely going to need. He will also use Mahamon occasionally, which is the ideal scenario since it doesn't do a lot of damage and can be healed up rather easily. Fire of Sinai on the other hand absolutely sucks and does a ton of damage even with debuffs, buffs and canopy veil up. And the funny thing is, all of that does not even matter because Metatron can just decide to buff his own attack and then wipe party members with Fire of Sinai, and yeah, that is pretty much it. The rest of the party gets wiped on the following turn, and there goes attempt number 1. And pretty much the same thing happened on attempt number 2, though this time he decided to Dekaja my entire party before throwing out Fire of Sinai. Unlike the previous attempt, we managed to actually recover and get everybody back into the battle again. I got into this situation 2 more times and both times was somehow able to recover and stay in the battle. We even managed to get Metatron in his last phase. You may ask what happens when he gets there? Well, now he also gains access to Megidolaon, and this might hit even harder than Fire of Sinai. While it is still possible to keep everybody up with full buffs, debuffs and canopy veil, this battle somehow just got even worse. And because this isn't bad enough already, he also gets access to Debilitate now. This is not as bad as the Kaja would be, but it certainly doesn't make things any easier either. Anyways, we got Metatron into Red Bar at this point and throw out another Cursed Poison to recover. He barely has any HP left, but our Magatsui bar is only half full, so we unfortunately need to try and stall him for a little, and this is where we got another game over. With Tao down, we can't really keep up with the buffs any longer, and eventually a Debilitate in the Megidolaon seals the deal. Also, I want to point out that each of these attempts take between 20 and 25 minutes, so losing the battle this late can be very demotivating to say at least. Anyways, we talked about pretty much everything there is in this battle, so let's quickly skip forward for a bit. Once again, Metatron is getting dangerously close to being beaten, and this time the Magatsui bar also refills at pretty much the perfect time. This time luckily he falls to the Kasha up with Mahamon, so at this point I'm looking at his HP, questioning whether or not we got enough firepower to finish him off here. Since I'm really not a fan of stalling, we switch Giri out to activate the luck, bring him back in, put on one last buff, and the catastrophe from Futsunushi is enough to finish off the boss for good. And I was very much aware that Metatron gives a lot of experience, but I was not ready for this. Unlike the previous boss fights, we gain a full 6 levels from this fight alone and level up all the way to 68. This is huge and could make the next parts quite a bit more manageable. At this point, we now have to decide which route we want to go for the final parts of the run. Like mentioned earlier, true neutral is not possible within our rule set, and normal neutral is arguably the worst ending since it's the only one that doesn't involve a Lucifer fight. Eventually, I decided for the lawful ending since I feel like Tsukuyomi is the more interesting fight compared to Abdiel. Tsukuyomi not only has 9000 more HP compared to Abdiel, the entire gimmick of the fight is much more interesting in my opinion, and also there is a surprising amount of high level demons we can access now that are weak to ice, so this is probably the hardest path we can choose. Technically we could warp all the way there now since we already activated all the ley lines earlier, but I figure it's only fair we complete the game the intended way, and considering there are some mandatory encounters on the way, might as well pick up a level or two while we're at it. The first battle is against 3 Melchizedek. While they're weak against force, I stuck with my regular party since I figured this fight is way easier compared to the boss fights before. What I didn't notice though was that those Melchizedeks are actually level 79, and not only that, but if you wipe one of them, the others will just summon a new one, meaning we have to beat all 3 of them on the same turn. Since I am not sure whether or not we will get additional experience if we wipe more than the initial 3, I decided to reset here to make sure we only get the minimum amount of base experience from that fight. We also take this battle way more serious now and also work with our usual accursed poison strategies again. The Melchizedeks will mostly attack with light attacks, which is good since they lose a lot of press turns this way. They can also use Mortal Jihad, which hits like a truck, so you definitely need to watch out. Even though we were in a tough spot a couple of times throughout the battle, we managed to recover all of them, and once all 3 of them are pretty much done, it's the same as always. Activate luck and get rid of the enemies. And here is where I was really surprised. I figured we would get 1, maybe 2 levels at best from all those encounters combined, but the first one here already gave Naobino another full 4 levels, going all the way to 72. This is way more than I ever anticipated, but if the other battles are just like that, we might even have a strong level going into the final battles. Encounter number 2 is against the single Raosha. Similar to before, we once again work with accursed poison, and then start going to work using our physical attackers yet again. Raosha is really tanky, so this battle is definitely going to take a while. And to make things even worse, it also has access to Freikugel and likes to buff its magic attacks by using Concentrate. The magic attacks luckily are once again light attacks, but those battles generally are much tougher than I thought they were going to be. I remember them being pretty easy, but then again, on every playthrough of this game I did so far, I came in here with a level 90 plus party, which makes this part a lot easier. But yeah, that is everything we need to talk about here. Once Raosha is almost done, we switch in our luck user and finish off the battle. Just like before, we gain 4 levels yet again, and are now at level 76. I really like the looks of this, to be honest. There is one more mandatory battle before the final showdown, which is against Elilat. Elilat only uses Concentrate and Make It Aloud, but will summon a Flores and an Ose on the first turn. Once again, we make use of Accursed Poison as soon as the ads are summoned, but unfortunately this time all enemies are immune to Seal, so Flores gets put to sleep, while the other 2 get charmed. Since the ads will get resummoned when defeated, we just completely ignore them and focus on Elilat itself. Luckily it has way less HP compared to Sraosha, so we get through its HP pool rather quickly. Unfortunately, the concentrated Megadolan wipes Tau, even with full buffs, debuffs, and a canopy wheel up. While the ads are annoying, luckily they're not nearly as dangerous as Alilat, but recovery is still rather hard. The second time both Tau and Giri get wiped, and when Futsunushi goes down to the ads, I decided to throw the attempt. Watching this got me thinking though. Tau has no chance to survive a concentrated Megadolan, but since Alilat's attack pattern is scripted anyways, I can just replace her with a filler demon in her spot when the attacking turn is happening. This way, we can keep Tau alive and recovery is not an issue at all. And this worked out perfectly in the second attempt. With Tau up constantly, our buffs are not dropping any longer, and we're able to get through Alilat as well. Once only the ads remain, the battle is pretty much won already. Since they use physical attacks for the most part, we bring in Yatagarasu and have it use physical block while we damage the enemies. Once the Magatsui bar is full, we bring in our luck user and the last mandatory battle before the final gauntlet and gain another 2 levels, going to our final level of 78. Like mentioned before, this is way higher than I was expecting. In the last 4 battles, we gained a total of 16 levels, which is absolutely ridiculous and makes me much more comfortable for the final sets of battles upon us. Before we continue on with the final boss gauntlet of the game, we're going to make a couple of adjustments to our setup. Considering we have gotten quite some levels now, we have some new options available to us. At this point, I don't think I need to grind all too much for fusion accidents any long either. First of all, we've used Odin. Not only does Odin have Figment Slash from the get-go, which is incredibly strong if it hits, we can also fuse Null Ice onto it, which is certainly a big help in the upcoming fight against Tsukuyomi. We also get ourselves an Ongyo key. Even though Tsukuyomi is weak to fire attacks, I wanted to see how physical attacks fare against him. It certainly helps that Ongyo key nulls Ice as well. Figment Slash or other crit heavy moves should also work rather well, and looking forward to Lucifer later on, they are probably the way to go here. We also inherit Safeguard onto Nahobino for a certain gimmick in the upcoming battle. We get Impellus Animus and Dragon Eye onto Odin, and then are pretty much ready to go. Tsukuyomi has the highest HP out of all Nahobinos with 30,000. The wiki says that Tsukuyomi is not immune to Seal, so we start off with a Cursed Poison, and of course the Seal doesn't stick. The wiki seems to be wrong yet again, and to be honest, I'm not even surprised. I would have been rather surprised if you could just lock the final story bosses down like this. Anyways, we fully debuff the boss, and he proceeds to immediately throw out a Mabufu Barian, which one-shots Tau from full HP. Great start. Though, admittedly, I haven't even set up my buffs yet, and with her being only level 65, I can't say that I'm too surprised about this. Ongyoki's Fire Draco Strike also does less damage than I was hoping for. Since he has no fire potency on his skill set, we can't really increase the damage of this either, and if this wasn't bad enough, the first empowered Figment Slash from Odin misses. I was hoping that we have a decent chance to hit here, but Figment Slash is a low accuracy move, and with Tsukuyomi having a whopping 110 agility, he has a very high chance to dodge attacks regularly. We bring Tau back and also try to get some damage in. Tsukuyomi generally only has one press turn, but likes to start his turn with Yabusame Shot, which is an auto-crit physical move, which he then follows up with False Replication, where he sets up a copy. Our job is to now find out which one the real Tsukuyomi is, and here is where Safeguard we put onto Nahobino comes in really handy. We can just throw a fire shard that hits both targets, and thanks to Safeguard, we're not going to lose any press turns in the process. I also heard that there is a way to tell which one is the real one, since the copies allegedly are slightly darker. I tried this on my first attempt with Tau, and yeah, that didn't work at all. Either this is real subtle, or I'm just too blind to notice it, so we'll just continue on using the intended strategy in the future. All of that doesn't matter though, because Tsukuyomi one-shots Ongyoki with Mahama Barian, and then also wipes Tau, which effectively means the first attempt is over. One thing to note here is that he will start summoning more and more copies throughout the battle as his HP gets lower, and the true copies also give him additional press turns as well. Tau at this point is too low of a level to keep up with the incoming damage, so I decided to fuse a Lakshmi with Luster Candy and bring her into the battle instead of Tau. We also replaced Impalus Animus on Odin with critical aura. While Figment Slash is an auto crit anyways, it is still useful since it gives the next attack move 100% accuracy, which is just what we need here. This actually worked out somewhat decently in the beginning, as Nahobino is now the only party member to not null ice, which makes dealing with the incoming damage much more manageable. Unfortunately, once again, Ongyoki gets wiped shortly afterwards thanks to another Mahama Barian. Once the fake copies are up, we proceed to go on with the actual strategy, which means he will follow it up with true replication on the next turn. Now we can damage both copies, so this is much less of an issue. Another thing to mention here is that while Tsukuyomi has neither Dekasha nor Dekunda, he will neutralize all his debuffs every time he starts generating copies, so we also need to constantly debuff him as well. Just like before, Ongyoki gets wiped with yet another Mahama Barian. During recovery, we usually bring in Tausch so she can help with healing and buffing, which is certainly useful, but it's not for long because Tsukuyomi really likes to target an insta-kill weakness. Eventually the boss will also charge up, at which point he will throw out Moonlight Frost on the following turn, which does huge piercing ice magic to the entire party. I wasn't sure how much damage this would do, so I set up a safety canopy wheel, hoping that with a fully buffed party and a partially debuffed enemy, we would be able to take the hit. And the answer to that is no. Everybody except Nahobino got wiped on the following Moonlight Frost, and this pretty much seals the deal for this attempt. The biggest problem is Ongyoki having a light weakness, and since the boss loves targeted and with it also doing rather little damage with Fire Draco Strike, I decided to reload an earlier save and fuse something else for this battle. The demon of our choosing here is Yamato no Orochi, which is a few levels slower, but has fire potency to buff up Fire Draco Strike and is also immune to ice while being neutral to light. But that's not all. I wasn't really satisfied using Lakshmi as support/healer either, so I checked which demon would fit better and noticed that Alilad would be the perfect support for the endgame. Unfortunately, it's level 81, so we need to fusion exit and grind one last time. And anyone wanna take a guess how long this took? Take a guess. And I'm 99% sure you're all wrong because I literally got Alilad on the very first fusion during full moon. If this is the game's way of repaying me for all 59 hours wasted so far trying to grind all kinds of things, then I'll gladly take it. At this point, we also put Debilitate on Nahobino. While it does need a ton of MP, we are in dire need of a full debuff at this point of the game, so I guess there is no way around it any longer. We also restock on chakra drops. Those are not really that useful anymore, but who knows when a clutch one might be needed. With those changes in place, we return and face Tsukuyomi yet again. The beginning of the battle is pretty similar to before, though I can already see that Yamato no Orochi is doing roughly the same, if not a little more damage compared to Ongyoki, so the change was definitely the correct decision. Other than that, it's pretty much the same until we get to the point where he starts charging up again for his big attack. This time we make sure the entire party is fully buffed and healed, the enemy is fully debuffed, and with the help of Canopy Wheel, we're barely able to keep everybody alive after the oncoming Moonlight Frost. Considering this is by far his strongest attack, I am pretty sure we can win the battle. At this point, it's probably a matter of trying to keep everybody's MP up until the very end. Both Debilitate and Luster Candy take a lot of MP, so if Nahobino is not on debuff duty or throwing fire shards at the false copies, he's usually throwing some kind of MP item. As the battle progresses, Tsukuyomi starts summoning even more copies, which give him additional press turns, and combined with Yabusame Shot, those can quickly stack up the damage on the party. The true copies can also use Debilitate, which certainly doesn't make things any easier. If Nahobino gets a free action every now and then, we throw a Fire Gem for some additional damage. Fire Gems deal about 300 damage, which is almost as much as Yamato no Orochi's Fire Draco Strike, so you definitely want to make use of those if there is a chance. When he charges up for Moonlight Frost for the second time, we switch Shikiuchi in as fodder since Yamato no Orochi doesn't have any buffs up and would definitely get wiped even with an extra guard up. The bigger issue here is that the entire party is getting rather low on MP, and with Nahobino on defense and debuff duty, it's very hard to keep everybody's MP up while also trying to stay in the battle. We're getting to the point where Tsukuyomi now summons 3 copies, which gets them 4 press turns, so we throw out another canopy wheel since the incoming damage can quickly overwhelm the party. Unfortunately, that didn't help either, as a Mahamabarian wiped our snake, and with almost the entire party out of MP, recovery is pretty much impossible. The following turn, Tsukuyomi charged up another Moonlight Frost, and at this point we don't have the means to keep our defense wall any longer, and we lose the fight. I know the party definitely works, we just need to find the right setup to pull through. Because of that, we make some adjustments. First of all, we put Yamato no Orochi on the first party slot since it can pretty much always gain additional press turns with Fire Draco Strike. We also start using Sutras, which we haven't really used all too much, in order to max out the physical and support potential on Odin. This increases DPS a little bit, but also reduces the MP cost of skills, which is probably the even more important part. With that, we're back into the battle, and at this point we don't need to talk about the entire thing anymore, so let's skip forward a little bit. We are back at dealing with the boss's copies, and similar to the previous attempt, our snake gets wiped once again due to an unlucky Mahamabarian, followed by Yabusame shot. While we do manage to live through the falling Moonlight Frost, we barely have any MP recovery items at this point, so eventually the party is not going to be able to buff and debuff any longer. Once this happens, it's only a matter of time, and even though we're getting closer and closer to beating Tsukuyomi, we're still a little bit off. The biggest issue is definitely MP management in combination with having to reapply Debilitate and Luster Candy every third turn. Because of this, we made a couple of changes to the party yet again. Since this is literally 4 days before the video should go live, I got a little bit stressed, so I forgot to record the changes we made, so let me quickly talk about them while you can watch the start of the following attempt. First of all, we got 2 more Lachesis essences in order to get boon boost on both Naobino and Elilat. This extends the duration of buffs and debuffs by another turn, which not only reduces MP cost, but also frees up some of Naobino's turns for other things like MP regeneration, canopy wheel, or even things like throwing fire gems. Since the last 2 attempts always started going downhill when Yamato no Orochi was wiped due to a Mahamabarian, we also put Null Light on it from the Nebiros essence. With those changes, our setup should be much more solid compared to before, so let's see where it gets us. We skip over to the later portions, and you can see that our party looks to be in much better shape compared to before, so the changes definitely seem to have paid off. We block another Moonlight Frost, and Tsukuyomi is almost down at this point. We are pretty much ready to take it down now, so we bring in our old buddy to activate the Luck Magatsui. Luckily for the true copies, you don't have to find the correct one, as they all take the same amount of damage, so we single one out, throw everything we got at him, and we win this fight as well. I definitely don't regret going lawful. This battle was probably much more interesting than Abdiel would have been. Anyways, we gain another 3 levels and get up all the way to 81, with only 2 battles left to go. I suspect that Nuwa is going to be much easier compared to Tsukuyomi, but only one way to find out, right? The wiki says Nuwa is not immune to Seal, so we're going to try for a Cursed Poison again, though I'm pretty sure that this is not going to work. Nuwa is luckily weak to fire as well, so we can pretty much stay with the same party setup as before, though we do make some slight changes. We put Null Electricity on our snake since the battle is very electricity heavy and it has a natural weakness to it. Naobino gets Null Force since Nuwa also has single target force attacks, and looking at my skills here, some might know where we're going with this. Since Nuwa has much less agility compared to Tsukuyomi, we also put Impellus Animus back on Odin to further increase his damage as well. With that, we're off into the final Naobino battle, where we start off with a Cursed Poison, and just as expected, there is no Seal. Thanks for nothing, Wiki. Anyways, we set up Taunt on Naobino and start going to work on the boss. Nuwa gets 3 press turns, but loves to spam electricity attacks which everybody but Elilat is immune against. Thanks to Odin's Repel, Amazio-Barian pretty much instantly ends her turn, so we can continue buffing, debuffing, and putting out damage. And yeah, that is honestly it for most of the battle. Nuwa loves wasting her turns, so we really don't have a lot of problems getting through the fight against her. The most annoying thing is that she will occasionally Dekunda herself, but other than that, we don't really have any issues at all. Even her gimmick with the electricity bits doesn't happen until very late into the battle, which is probably because we end her turns early when she uses Masioberia. When she charges up her bits, you need to destroy them on the following turns, since she will otherwise obliterate your party with piercing electricity damage. Luckily the bits only have 500 HP each, and the charged Hades Blast from Odin is enough to take them all out at once. When they go down, Nuwa will use Lightning Pulse for every bit defeated, but luckily everybody but Elilad straight up blocks the attack, and Elilad itself can easily heal itself to full again. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to talk about. We activate the Luck Magatsui at the end of the battle, throw out the last couple of attacks, and beat Nuwa on our very first attempt. I was pretty sure Nuwa was easier than Tsukuyomi, but I was not expecting a cakewalk like this. We gain one more level and hit our final level of 82 with only one more battle remaining. Since we're not going through the true neutral ending, we only have to go through phase 1 Lucifer, which should be doable with our current setup. We do, however, replace our good old snake at this point, since Lucifer nulls all elements except dark and also resists physical. Our damage source for the battle is going to be Impellus Animus for the pierce, combined with the Figment/crits to generate as many additional press turns as possible. Because of this, we've used Akali and put Impellus Animus as well as Dragon Eye on it. Unfortunately, Kali has a -3 support potency, so Impellus Animus needs a crap ton of MP, but hopefully that shouldn't matter too much. We also put Makarakarn on Elilad, since Lucifer mostly possesses single target magical attacks. And you might know where I'm going with this. I highly doubt Taunt and Makarakarn strats work against the final boss, but it's worth a shot, right? Well, only one way to find out, so let's head into the final boss battle of the game against Lucifer. On turn 1, we set up both Taunt and Makarakarn, and would you look at that, the boss hits right into Nahobino and gets repelled. Is it actually possible to cheese the final boss like this? Well, the answer to that is no, because from turn 2 on forward, Lucifer will only attack with Megidolaon and completely stop using elemental spells. My guess is that Lucifer's AI checks whether or not a Makarakarn is up, and then decides whether to use an elemental attack or not. But knowing this, we can plan accordingly, since the party can take the attack rather well, even without full buffs and debuffs up. At some point, Lucifer starts summoning a star that is either weak to fire or ice, and you definitely want to destroy this one as soon as possible, since Lucifer will one-shot a party member the following turn if the star is still on the field. Luckily, they're neutral to physical attacks, so a single Figment Slash is usually enough to deal with them. And here is probably the most annoying part of the battle. Lucifer likes to use Tentarufu to confuse the entire party. If we get lucky, Nahobino does not get hit and we can easily recover with an Amrita Soda, but otherwise this can get dangerous very quickly. Unfortunately, the Tentarufu screwed up my turn orders, Taunt ran out, and you can immediately see why we want to prevent him from using elemental magic, because those will wipe our party very quickly. And that's it for attempt number 1 already. Again, the biggest issue is the amount of things Nahobino has to do in this battle. He has to keep up Taunt, debuff the enemy occasionally, and also throw MP items onto everybody else, and if Nahobino gets confused and can't act, the entire battle falls apart relatively quickly. This was also what happened on attempt number 2. Again, it's Tentarufu in combination with Taunt running out that seals the deal. Because of this, we make some more adjustments to the party. First of all, we haven't touched any instances we picked up through the entire game, so now is the perfect time to spread all of them across the entire party. We go pay Queen Mabdo a visit to trade in all gems we collected for more incenses for some additional stats. We're also going to make some changes into our skill setup. Impellus Animus needs way too much MP on Kali, so we get Health Thrust back, which is an auto-pierce physical move. Kali will do less damage this way, but the amount of MP saved might make this one more useful compared to the previous combination. We also put Fierce Roar on it. During my attempts, I found out that Makarakarn isn't even needed after Lucifer hits into a repel once, so all we need is somebody that puts up a taunt effect for him to stop using elemental attacks. By putting Fierce Roar on Kali, we can give Nahobino more room for other actions like debuffing or healing MP. The most important part though is getting both Abyssal Mask and Hellish Mask on Nahobino. This greatly reduces the chance for ailments to land, and if we can prevent Naobino from getting confused, the fight would probably become quite a bit more manageable. Since we don't need Canopy Veil any longer, the stacked ailment resists should work out rather well. Since we also don't need Makara Karn on Alilat any longer, we got another open skill slot here, which we fill with Great Mana Spring. There isn't really anything more useful, and if we can drag out having to heal MP for a bit longer, this already helps. With all those changes set, we return to the battle against Lucifer. We start off with Rosetsu Feast, set up a taunt on Kali, and throw a magic mirror on it. Remember, Lucifer will hit into the repel on turn 1, and then continue to only do Megidolaun as damaging attack from this point on as long as a taunt is up. Our main damage dealer is still Odin, who with Impaler's Animus hits for over 2000 damage on Figment Slash, which is really crazy strong. With buffs and debuffs up, there is also a good chance somebody on the team dodges Megidolaun, which instantly ends Lucifer's turn and prevents further shenanigans for the time being. Once you get past a certain HP threshold, Lucifer will also start using both Dekasha and Dekunda and will usually use Megidolaun as his second action. The stacked ailment resists come in clutch, as Naobino pretty much never gets hit with Tenterufu, which makes recovery so much easier compared to before. The boss will also start to occasionally use Cold Dark Matter, which maximizes his defense. If that happens, we can throw a Purge Charm, which acts like the Dekasha spell and dispels the defense buff. When you pass the next HP threshold, Lucifer will use Diorama once to heal for roughly 4000 damage, and then start summoning 2 stars instead of just 1. There are 2 ways we can deal with this. If Odin is not charged up, then Naobino will throw a gem at 1 star, Odin wipes the other one with Figment Slash, while Kali finishes off the second one, so nothing too dangerous luckily here either. If Odin is charged however, he can just easily wipe both of them with Hades Blast. And while keeping buffs, debuffs and MP up is still quite the struggle, the changes we made to our setup certainly give me more confidence that we can win this. Each Megidolaun dodge and each Figment Slash gets us closer to the win. Since this is also the last battle, there is no need to use luck anymore either. Speaking of which, I only just noticed now that I completely ignored the full Magatsui bar pretty much all battle long. I was so focused on keeping everything in this fight together that I never even paid attention to it at all. Anyways, we once again destroy both stars and are pretty much ready to end the battle now. Technically, there is nothing fatal that should happen at this point anymore. We heal up one final time, and we miss Figment Slash from Odin. This is literally the first time it missed in this battle, and of course it's right at the end. Luckily, we're in a very good position, so recovery from that is no big deal, and the following Figment Slash does hit the target, and that is it everybody. Lucifer is down, and we beat SMT5 on hard, completing only mandatory battles. This is, without a doubt, the hardest challenge I've ever done, and it is both one of the most fun and most miserable experience I ever went through since I started doing this. And I don't even want to talk too much at this point anymore, since it's Tuesday noon as I'm writing this, and I want to have the video done by Friday at the latest, so I better start editing right away. Thanks as always to this video's Patreons and channel members, and I hope you all enjoyed the run as much as I did, at certain times at least. That is it for me today. Thanks for watching, and I hope I see all of you next time again. Until then, take care.